Betty Smith, a 68-year-old widow, discovers her daughter Amanda's shocking plan to place her in Pinerest Meadows Retirement Community without consent, believing Betty's age and recent hip injury justify control. Unbeknownst to Amanda, Betty has served on Pinerest's board for 15 years, giving her unexpected leverage. Confronting her daughter's betrayal, Betty asserts her autonomy, revealing a living trust that protects her home. As Amanda and her husband Richard face the consequences of their actions, Betty's resilience shines, hinting at a deeper story of empowerment and family dynamics. What secrets will unravel as Betty reclaims her independence? If Betty's story of resilience and empowerment moved you, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. Share where you're tuning in from, and don't miss tomorrow's special story. Your support helps us bring these powerful narratives to life. Click subscribe and join our community today. For 40 years, I poured my heart and soul into raising my 3 children, Amanda, my eldest, and the twins, David and Daniel. Every decision, every sacrifice was for them. I juggled 3 jobs, mornings at the library, afternoons slinging plates at Cooper's Diner, and weekends scrubbing floors for the wealthy families across town. Sleep was a distant dream, a luxury I couldn't afford. I made sure my kids had everything they needed: food on the table, clothes on their backs, and the chance to chase their dreams through college. I even helped them buy their first homes, remortgaging my own to make it happen. But last month, my daughter Amanda blindsided me. She said we were going to lunch, a rare treat from her. Instead, she drove me straight to Pinerest Meadows Retirement Community and checked me in without so much as a word of warning. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I've been on the board of directors there for 15 years. My name is Betty Smith, and at 68, I never thought I'd be sharing a story like this. I'd built my life on the belief that family was everything, that the love and sacrifices you pour into your children come back as respect and care in your later years. I was wrong, at least about Amanda. Her betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, a wound that still aches when I think of her. I married young, at 22, to Howard, a man with a charming smile and grand promises. But life with him was far from the fairy tale he'd painted. He worked at the local paper mill, earning just enough to keep us afloat while I raised our children. We scraped by, making do with what we had. Amanda came first, followed by the twins 3 years later. Life was tough but manageable until Howard got sick. Lung cancer, the doctor said, from years of breathing in the mill's toxic fumes. He fought hard, but when Amanda was 16 and the boys were 13, he slipped away. Suddenly, I was a widow with 3 teenagers, a mortgage, and a part-time librarian's salary that couldn't stretch far enough. I did what I had to. I took on more work, mornings at the library, afternoons waitressing, and weekends cleaning houses. Exhaustion became my constant companion, but I hid it from my kids. Amanda, though, noticed. "Mom, why do you have to work so much?" she'd ask, her teenage voice sharp with frustration when I missed her school plays or parent-teacher nights. "Jessica's mom is always there for everything." I'd swallow the lump in my throat and explain, "Jessica's mom has a husband with a 6-figure income, sweetheart. I'm doing my best." My best meant missing out on their milestones, but it also meant getting them through college. Amanda studied business administration at State University, her tuition partly covered by scholarships, but propped up by my remortgaged home. The twins earned athletic scholarships, but I still worked extra shifts to cover their books and living expenses. Those years broke my body, backaches, sore feet, and meals skipped to save time or money, but seeing them walk across that graduation stage made it all feel worth it. Or so I thought. Amanda married Richard Palmer right after college, a man born into wealth so old it seemed to seep from his pores. His family owned half the commercial real estate in our county, and they never let anyone forget it. From the moment Amanda said "I do," the Palmers looked down on us. At her wedding, Richard's mother, Vivian, cornered me near the restrooms, her eyes raking over my simple dress. "We're so pleased Richard found someone with ambition," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's a pity Amanda didn't have more cultural exposure growing up. We'll take care of that, of course." Her words stung, but I bit my tongue and smiled. "Amanda's smart and determined," I said. "She'll thrive anywhere." Inside, though, I felt small, like my decades of sacrifice were being weighed and found wanting. Over the next 10 years, I watched Amanda change. The girl who used to sit with me at the kitchen table giggling as we clipped coupons vanished. In her place was a woman obsessed with status, designer clothes, a gleaming car, a sprawling 5-bedroom home in Oakwood Estates. She and Richard bought that house, a monument to their success, but when they threw a housewarming party, I wasn't invited. "It's just for Richard's business associates, Mom," she told me over the phone, her tone dismissive. "You wouldn't know anyone there." Later, David let slip that he and Daniel had been invited. When I confronted Amanda, she sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Mom, you would have shown up in one of your thrift store outfits. It would have been embarrassing." Her words sliced through me, but I buried the pain. She was my daughter. I told myself she'd come around, that she just needed time to see what really mattered. While Amanda built her perfect life, I kept working. I climbed the ranks to head librarian, a role that gave me pride and purpose. I also joined the boards of several community organizations, including Pinerest Meadows Retirement Community. It wasn't paid, but it felt meaningful, especially after watching my own mother suffer in a poorly run care facility during her final years. At Pinerest, I poured my heart into improving resident care. "Mrs. Smith, your insights are invaluable." Jerome Washington, the executive director, told me after I suggested changes to their care protocols. "Would you consider joining our board? We need your compassion and practical mind." I said yes, though I kept it from my kids. Amanda, especially, would roll her eyes whenever I mentioned my community work, muttering about how I should slow down. At 65, I retired from the library, my body too tired to keep up the grind. I had my savings, modest but enough, in a small inheritance from my Aunt Mildred that I'd invested wisely. It wasn't the kind of wealth that would impress the Palmers, but it gave me independence. Then, 3 years into retirement, I fell while gardening and broke my hip. Recovery was grueling, weeks of physical therapy and relying on neighbors for help with groceries and chores. The twins visited often, despite living 3 hours away with young families of their own. Amanda came twice in 8 weeks. During her second visit, she stood in my kitchen, her designer purse perched far from the counter, as if my home might taint it. "Mom, have you considered that this house might be too much for you now?" she asked, her voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Concern maybe, but it felt rehearsed. "You're not getting any younger." "I'm managing fine," I told her, forcing a smile. "Mrs. Perez helps with groceries and physical therapy's almost done." She frowned, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the counter. "Normal. Mom, you're almost 70. This isn't just about your hip. It's about being realistic about what you can handle." I changed the subject, too tired to argue. That night, after she left, I noticed my kitchen drawers ajar, papers on my desk slightly out of place. I brushed it off, chalking it up to my own distraction. 3 weeks later, Amanda called. "Mom, I'm taking you to lunch on Thursday. Richard and I want to talk about your future care." Her tone was firm, almost clinical. "That's not necessary," I said. "I'm doing much better now." She cut me off. "It's not a request, Mom. I'll pick you up at 11. Thursday morning, I dressed with care, choosing my nicest blouse and slacks. They weren't designer, but they were mine, and I wore them with pride. When Amanda's sleek SUV pulled into my driveway, I was ready, purse in hand, a sweater draped over my arm. "You look nice, Mom," she said as I climbed in, her first compliment in months. It warmed me, though a small part of me wondered what she was after. "Where are we meeting Richard?" I asked as we drove. She adjusted her sunglasses, her face unreadable. "He'll join us there. It's a new place just outside town." She chatted about my grandkids, 16 and 14, caught up in their busy lives and rarely brought to visit. I nodded along, offering the occasional, "That's wonderful." But my mind wandered. 20 minutes in, I noticed we weren't heading toward any restaurants. The road stretched past shopping centers, into the rural outskirts of town. A prickle of unease settled in my chest. "Amanda, where exactly are we going?" I asked. "It's a surprise," she said, eyes fixed on the road. "Trust me, you'll understand when we get there." 10 minutes later, she turned onto a tree-lined drive, and my heart sank. The elegant sign for Pinerest Meadows Retirement Community loomed ahead. "Amanda," I said, my voice steady but tight, "why are we at Pinerest?" She parked and turned to me, her expression meant to be kind, but cold in her eyes. Mom, Richard and I have talked, and we think it's time you had proper care. After your fall, it's obvious you can't live alone anymore. I stared at her, shock rooting me to the seat. I've recovered almost completely. My doctor says I'm doing excellent for my age. This isn't just about your hip, she said as if speaking to a child. It's about preventing the next accident. Besides, we've handled everything. Your room's ready, and we packed your essentials from the house last weekend. You what? My voice rose, trembling with disbelief. You went into my home and packed my things without asking? The betrayal burned, a sharp, searing pain in my chest. Amanda, my daughter, had decided my life for me, as if I were a problem to be solved, a burden to be shelved. But she didn't know I wasn't just a resident here. For 15 years, I'd helped shape Pinerest Meadows, and I wasn't about to let her rewrite my story. As the movers hauled in my bedroom furniture and a scattering of personal belongings, I stood frozen, my world tilting under the weight of betrayal. My daughter Amanda had orchestrated this upheaval while I was away at my book club, blissfully unaware that my life was being dismantled. The house I'd called home for decades was now listed with Triple Crown Realty, thrust into a market Amanda deemed hot. The audacity of it all, the cold, calculated precision, left me speechless, my throat tight with shock. Her betrayal wasn't just a decision. It was a violation, a theft of my autonomy so complete it stole my breath. Amanda, mistaking my stunned silence for surrender, pressed on with a tone that dripped with condescension. It's for the best, Mom. You'll be safer here, and Richard and I won't have to lie awake worrying about you falling with no one to help. Her words were polished, rehearsed, as if she'd practiced this speech in front of her country club friends, who apparently volunteered at this facility and swore it was the county's finest. Did it ever cross your mind to talk to me first? I finally choked out, my voice trembling with the effort to stay composed. Amanda's response was maddeningly simple. We knew you'd fight it. This way's easier for everyone. Easier for whom? The question burned in my chest, igniting a slow, seething anger. You sold my home without my permission, I said, my voice rising despite myself. You packed up my life without so much as a phone call. That's not love, Amanda. That's control. Her perfectly manicured eyebrows knitted together, her face a mask of irritation. Don't be so dramatic, Mom. That house was too big for you, and those stairs were a hazard. Here, everything's taken care of. 3 meals a day, activities, doctors on call. It's like a permanent vacation. Her words grated, each one a dismissal of my independence. A vacation I never chose, I whispered, the weight of her disregard settling deep in my bones. Amanda, unfazed, reached for her car door. It's done. Let's go inside and get you settled. Richard's meeting us in the director's office to finalize the paperwork. As we approached the entrance, a strange numbness enveloped me. For 15 years, I'd served on the board of this very facility, shaping its policies, designing its newer wings. Yet here I was, being ushered in like a stranger, my daughter guiding me as if I were a child, lost in a crowd. The receptionist, Tanya, looked up, her face lighting with recognition. Mrs. Smith, we weren't expecting you. Is there a board meeting I missed? Amanda stiffened beside me, her confidence faltering. I forced a smile. No, Tanya, no meeting. Apparently my daughter has decided I'm to become a resident here. Tanya's eyes widened, her confusion palpable. A resident? But you led the tour last month. I nodded, cutting in smoothly. Yes, it was quite informative. Is Jerome in his office? Tanya confirmed he was, meeting with a Mr. Palmer, my son-in-law Richard. Perfect, I said, my voice steady now. We'll join them. As we walked down the familiar hallway, Amanda's whisper was sharp with accusation. You've been here before? You never mentioned touring retirement homes? I kept my tone even, laced with a quiet edge. There's a lot I don't mention, dear. You're so consumed with your important life. Her silence was telling, her discomfort a small victory. We reached Jerome's office just as he was shaking hands with Richard, both men turning as we entered. Jerome's face lit up. Betty, I didn't realize. He paused, glancing at Richard. Are you related to Mr. Palmer? Richard, caught off guard, managed a stiff, This is my mother-in-law. I smiled pleasantly. Jerome, it seems my daughter and son-in-law have decided I should live here without consulting me naturally. Jerome's warmth faltered, his confusion evident. I don't understand. Why would you become a resident when you're on our board? The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Richard's face drained of color, while Amanda's mouth worked soundlessly, like a fish stranded on shore. Board of directors? She finally croaked. Yes, I said, settling into a chair across from Jerome's desk, my voice calm but unyielding. For 15 years. In fact, I chaired the committee that hired you, didn't I, Jerome? He nodded, his discomfort growing. You were instrumental in our resident care policies, he told my stunned daughter and son-in-law. Richard sputtered, but we've already sold her house. The paperwork, I cut him off. You haven't sold anything. The house is in a living trust I set up a decade ago. You can't sell it without my signature, which I haven't given. Amanda's face flushed a deep crimson, her composure crumbling. Mom, why didn't you tell us you were on some board? We've been worried sick about you living alone. Her words rang hollow, and I met her gaze with a quiet intensity. Have you? Is that why you visited me twice in the 3 months since my fall? Why you never asked about my finances or plans before deciding to institutionalize me? Jerome cleared his throat, offering privacy, but I waved it off. No need, Jerome. I believe my daughter and son-in-law were just leaving, unless they'd like to explain to the full board why they tried to admit one of its members without her consent. Richard stood abruptly. There's been a misunderstanding. Amanda, let's go. She hesitated, stammering about the deposit. Non-refundable, I finished, my voice cool. As stated in the admissions paperwork you signed without me. That's 15,000 shares donated to the Pinerest Scholarship Fund for nursing degrees. How generous. Amanda looked ready to combust. You can't be serious, Mom. We were trying to help. I held her gaze, unflinching. No, you were trying to erase the inconvenience of your aging mother in the way that suited you best. You didn't ask what I wanted. You didn't respect me enough to include me in my own life. Turning to Jerome, I shifted gears. Since I'm here, let's review the quarterly budget reports. I noticed some issues with the maintenance allocations. He caught on quickly, pulling out a folder. Of course, Betty. I glanced at Amanda and Richard. You can see yourselves out. And Amanda, don't come to my house unless you are ready to apologize. The new security system alerts me if anyone enters without my code. Richard all but dragged Amanda from the room, her furious whispers echoing through the partially open door. How were we supposed to know? She never tells us anything. After they left, Jerome set the folder aside, his concern genuine. Betty, are you okay? That was intense. I admitted my hands were shaking, my anger and disappointment raw. I'm fine, just hurt. He nodded. What now? I took a deep breath. I'll secure my house, ensure nothing's been taken, then I'll call my lawyer to protect my affairs. And I'll keep living my life on my terms. Jerome smiled. You handled that with grace. I managed a small laugh. Years of practice. Now those budget discrepancies. Jerome drove me home that afternoon, and I found my front door unlocked, boxes of clothes, photos, and keepsakes stacked in the hallway. Nothing irreplaceable was missing. Yet. I called a locksmith to change the locks and my attorney to send a cease and desist letter to Amanda and Richard. That evening, I sat on my back porch, wine in hand, watching the sunset. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Amanda, Richard, Amanda again. I let each call go to voicemail. A text arrived. Mom, you embarrassed us in front of the director. We were trying to do what's best. Call me so we can discuss this like adults. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my sons, David and Michael, and poured out the story. Their anger on my behalf warmed my heart. Want me to stay with you, Mom? David offered. I can work remotely. I declined gently. I'm perfectly capable, despite what your sister thinks. The next morning, Amanda's sleek car pulled into my driveway, her heels clicking on the path to my door. The sleek silver sedan sat boldly in my driveway, its presence announcing Amanda's arrival before she even reached the door. Through the discreet lens of the security camera, a precaution I'd installed after my fall, a detail I'd kept from her, I watched her approach. Her confident stride faltered slightly, as she pressed the doorbell, her voice carrying a mix of determination and impatience. "Mom, I know you're in there," she called out, her tone suggesting she wouldn't be ignored. "We need to talk about yesterday." I opened the door, standing firm in the threshold, my expression deliberately neutral, offering no invitation to cross into my space. "Yes," I said, my voice cool, measured. Amanda blinked, clearly caught off guard by the chill in my response. Her brow furrowed, and for a moment I glimpsed the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost pleading. I tilted my head slightly, my words deliberate and sharp. "I'd rather not welcome someone into my home who might be mentally cataloging my belongings for removal." The accusation landed like a stone, and Amanda's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, her lips parting in a silent protest. "That's not fair," she stammered, her voice rising with defensiveness. "We were trying to help." I raised an eyebrow, my gaze unwavering. "Help? By putting my house on the market without my knowledge? By packing up my life while I was conveniently out? By tricking me into visiting a retirement home under false pretenses?" Each question was a carefully aimed dart, and I could see them piercing her composure. "Interesting definition of help you have there." Amanda shifted uncomfortably, her arms crossing tightly over her chest. "You never told us you were on some board," she countered, as if that justified her actions. "How were we supposed to know you had connections there?" I sighed, my patience thinning but my voice remaining steady. "Amanda, the issue isn't what you didn't know about my position. The issue is that you made decisions about my life without consulting me. That ends now." Her eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance flaring. "So what? You're just going to keep living here alone until something worse than a broken hip happens?" The question stung, not because it held truth, but because it revealed how little she understood me. I straightened, my resolve hardening. "What I'm going to do is live my life as I see fit. I'm not infirm, senile, or incapable. I'm a 68-year-old woman with a vibrant life, multiple commitments, and the financial stability to support myself." Her skepticism was palpable, her lips pursing as she muttered, "Financial stability on a librarian's pension?" The condescension in her tone was all too familiar, a reminder of the assumptions she'd carried for years. I exhaled softly, a mix of exasperation and amusement coloring my response. "Amanda, not that it's your concern, but I have investments, savings, and a modest inheritance from Aunt Mildred that I've managed with care for decades. I serve on 3 boards, volunteer twice a week, and have a social circle far broader than you seem to imagine. I am not lonely, bored, or in need of your oversight." Her expression wavered, a flicker of doubt crossing her features, but she pressed on. "But what if you fall again? What then?" "I've already taken care of that," I interrupted, my voice firm. "I have a medical alert system installed. My neighbors check on me regularly, and your brothers, unlike you, call me weekly, without an agenda." The mention of her siblings hit its mark. Amanda's eyes glistened with sudden tears, and I couldn't tell if they stemmed from genuine hurt or frustration at being challenged. "You've always liked the boys better," she whispered, her voice trembling with accusation. "No," I said, my tone resolute. "I've always valued being treated with respect. Your brothers offer that. You and Richard see me as a problem to be fixed." She swiped at her eyes, her voice breaking. "That's not true, is it? When was the last time you visited me without suggesting I change my life? When was the last time you invited me to your home for anything other than babysitting? When was the last time you asked about my interests instead of telling me to slow down?" The questions hung in the air, unanswered. Amanda stood silent, her gaze dropping to the ground, and in that moment, I felt a pang of sorrow for the distance between us. "I want you to understand something clearly," I continued, my voice softening but unwavering. "I love you. You're my daughter, and that will never change. But I don't trust you right now. I won't allow you to control my affairs or make decisions for me." Her head snapped up, indignation flaring. "So what? You're cutting me off?" I shook my head, my posture steady. "No, I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. When you're ready to treat me as an autonomous adult worthy of respect, we can rebuild our relationship. Until then, I suggest you use that $15,000 non-refundable deposit as a reminder of what happens when you underestimate me. I paused, glancing at my watch. Now I have a board meeting to prepare for. With that, I gently but firmly closed the door, leaving her standing on the porch. Through the security camera, I watched her linger, her shoulders slumped in shock. For nearly a minute, she stood motionless, as if grappling with the weight of our exchange. Finally, she turned, her phone already in hand, likely dialing Richard to vent about her unreasonable mother. As I moved to the kitchen to brew a cup of tea, a quiet sadness settled over me, tempered by a resolute calm. There was no triumph in this moment, only the bittersweet acknowledgement of a fractured bond and the strength it took to assert my worth. The board meeting at Pinerest was charged with an undercurrent of curiosity. Word of my near admission had spread among the staff, and Jerome, ever discreet, had briefed the other board members. As I took my seat at the conference table, Eleanor Winthrop, the board chair, leaned close, her voice low. "Betty, I heard about your recent ordeal with your family." Her concern was genuine, her eyes searching mine. I offered a small smile. "News travels fast. I'm better than all right, Eleanor. I'm finally standing up for myself." She patted my hand, her warmth a quiet balm. "Good for you, and if you need anything, you have friends here." That simple gesture of solidarity carried me through the weeks that followed. My life brimmed with purpose: volunteer work, board responsibilities, book club discussions, and a new Tai Chi class I joined to strengthen my balance. My sons visited when they could, their children filling my home with laughter and the scent of freshly baked cookies. Unlike Amanda, they saw me not as a relic to be preserved, but as a vibrant woman with stories to share and love to give. One afternoon, as I knelt in my garden tending to a bed of vibrant tulips, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Amanda, alone this time, sat behind the wheel for several minutes, her hesitation palpable. Finally, she stepped out, approaching cautiously, her voice tentative. "Mom, can we talk?" I set down my trowel, peeling off my gardening gloves, and met her gaze. "That depends. Are you here as my daughter or as someone trying to manage my decline?" She winced, the words cutting deep. "I deserve that," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I agreed, "you do." Amanda took a shaky breath, her eyes meeting mine. "The boys told me what you said about how I've been treating you. And believe it or not, Richard's mother gave me an earful about respecting elders when she heard what we did." I couldn't help but laugh, the image of Vivian Palmer defending me a surprising twist. Vivian, of all people? Now that's an unexpected ally. A faint smile flickered across Amanda's face. She said, "Just because someone doesn't have our money doesn't mean they don't have their dignity." Coming from her, that was practically a sermon. I chuckled, shaking my head. Wonders never cease. Amanda's expression softened, her voice earnest. "Mom, I was wrong. We were wrong. I got so caught up in what I thought was best that I didn't consider what you wanted or needed. I'm sorry." I studied her, searching for the calculating woman who had tried to upend my life. Instead, I saw a glimpse of the daughter I'd raised, vulnerable, remorseful. "That's a start," I said finally. "But trust takes time, Amanda. I need to know you respect my autonomy." She nodded quickly. "I do, or I'm learning to. The way you handled everything, it woke me up. You're not just my aging mother. You're Betty Smith, board member, investor, and apparently a force to be reckoned with." I patted the bench beside me. "Sit down, Amanda. Let me tell you about the mother you never knew." And so I did. I shared stories of the investment club I joined 2 decades ago, the careful growth of my portfolio. I spoke of my work with Pinerest and the other organizations that filled my days with purpose. I described my routines, my friendships, my passions beyond the role of mother. For the first time in years, Amanda listened, truly listened. As the sun dipped low, casting golden shadows across the garden, something shifted between us, not a full reconciliation, but the fragile beginnings of understanding. "I always saw you as just my mom," she confessed. "The woman who worked too hard and didn't fit into Richard's world. I never thought about who you were beyond that." I smiled gently. Most children don't. But relationships evolve, Amanda. I'm not just your mother. I'm a person with my own life. She nodded, her eyes glistening. As she prepared to leave, she hesitated. Would you come to dinner next Sunday? Just family, no strings. The kids miss you. I considered her invitation, my heart cautiously hopeful. I'd like that. But Amanda, this is a new beginning. Don't squander it. After she drove away, I returned to my gardening, my hands sinking into the cool earth as I reflected on our conversation. Perhaps there was hope for us yet, not as the deferential mother she'd once known, but as Betty Smith, a woman reclaiming her voice in her life. At 68, Betty Smith stood in her garden, the morning sun warming her shoulders as she knelt among the dahlias, her hands deep in the cool, familiar earth. She was a woman of many roles: board member, investor, gardener, friend, and yes, mother. But none defined her more than her fierce determination to remain herself, whole and unbroken, despite the betrayal that had shaken her world. The previous day had left her reeling. When Amanda, her eldest daughter, walked out, slamming the door behind her, Betty had leaned against it, her breath uneven, her hands trembling with the weight of what had just unfolded. Amanda, her firstborn, the child she'd cradled through fevers and heartaches, had tried to strip away her independence with a callousness that cut deeper than any wound. The memory of Amanda and her husband Richard packing boxes, presuming to sell Betty's home without her consent, burned in her chest. It wasn't just a house they'd targeted. It was her sanctuary, her history, the physical embodiment of a life painstakingly built. In the kitchen, seeking solace in routine, Betty filled the kettle, the soft clink of metal grounding her. As the water heated, she gazed around the room. The bookshelves she and Howard had built before his illness stood proudly in the living room, their wood worn but warm with memories. The kitchen table, scarred from years of homework and family dinners, held the echoes of laughter and tears. Through the window, her garden bloomed, each plant a testament to 30 springs of hope and renewal. This was no mere house, it was her life's work, and Amanda's casual dismissal of it felt like a betrayal of everything Betty had poured into her family. The kettle's whistle startled her, pulling her from her thoughts. As she poured steaming water over a chamomile tea bag, her phone buzzed, Amanda's name flashing on the screen. Betty silenced it, setting the phone face down. She needed space to think, to fortify herself. The confrontation at Pinerest, where Amanda had tried to push her into a retirement home, had been a fleeting victory. Betty knew her daughter and son-in-law too well. They wouldn't retreat easily. They'd regroup, perhaps with a softer approach, but their goal would remain: control over her life, her home, her assets. Sipping her tea, Betty called Franklin Weiss, her attorney since Howard's death. Franklin had guided her through the labyrinth of widowhood, helping her establish a trust and manage her finances. His warm voice steadied her as she recounted the day's events, from Amanda's deceptive lunch invitation to the tense standoff at Pinerest. Franklin listened, his pen scratching notes, and when she finished, his tone was grave but reassuring. They have no legal right to sell your home or make decisions for you or you, he said. Your mental clarity is evident. You're active, sharp, engaged. There's no basis for guardianship. The word guardianship sent a chill through her. Could Amanda and Richard really go that far? Franklin's calm assurance eased her fears, but he urged caution. We'll update your directives and power of attorney. Is David still your choice for healthcare proxy? Without hesitation, Betty confirmed. Of her 3 children, David had always respected her autonomy, his quiet strength a contrast to Amanda's overbearing control. She asked to remove Amanda from any decision-making role, a decision that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Franklin promised to send the paperwork and advised her to document everything, every call, every text, every violation of her boundaries. If they try to enter your home again, call the police, he said. The idea felt extreme, but the boxes still stacked in her hallway were proof of their audacity. She spent the afternoon cataloging the day's events, photographing the packed boxes, and listing their contents, each action a small reclaiming of her power. That evening, a text from Richard arrived, his words dripping with false civility. Betty, yesterday was unfortunate. Amanda was only trying to help. Let's discuss this like reasonable adults. I can have my financial advisor review your situation. Betty forwarded it to Franklin without replying, her heart heavy with disappointment. Richard's offer wasn't reconciliation, it was another attempt to manage her. She called her sons next. David answered quickly, his concern immediate. As she recounted the story, his voice rose with outrage. "That's elder abuse, Mom. It's illegal." Betty calmed him, explaining Franklin's involvement, but his offer to stay with her warmed her heart. "I'm fine," she insisted, though his support bolstered her resolve. Daniel's reaction mirrored his twins, shock, then anger. "Amanda's always been selfish, but this," he said, his disgust palpable. "She thinks she can manage you? She can't even manage her own messes." His attempt at humor lightened the moment, but the pain lingered. The next morning, Betty woke with a strange energy, as if the fight had awakened something fierce within her. She pulled on her gardening clothes and returned to her dahlias, the act of nurturing life a balm for her wounded spirit. As she worked, a car pulled into her driveway, not Amanda's SUV or Richard's sports car, but a modest sedan. Vivian Palmer, Richard's mother, stepped out, her tailored suit and pearls absurdly out of place in Betty's quiet neighborhood. Vivian's visit was a surprise, her presence as unwelcome as it was unexpected. In the 20 years since Amanda married Richard, Vivian had treated the Smiths with barely veiled contempt, her interactions cold and condescending. Betty stood, brushing soil from her hands, and met her gaze. "Vivian," she said, her voice steady, "this is unexpected." "I heard about yesterday," Vivian said, her tone clipped. "Amanda's upset. She thinks you misunderstood her." The accusation stung, but Betty held her ground. "There's no misunderstanding," she replied. "Amanda and Richard tried to sell my home, pack my life away, without asking me. They treated me like I don't matter." Vivian's eyes flickered, but she pressed on, defending Amanda's intentions. "She's worried about you, Betty. She wants you safe." The words were hollow, and Betty's patience snapped. "This isn't about safety, it's about respect. Amanda doesn't get to decide my life for me." She gestured to her garden, her home. "This is my world, Vivian. I built it. I won't let it be taken away." Vivian stood, her expression unreadable, and left with a curt nod. As her car disappeared, Betty returned to her garden, her heart heavy but resolute. She was Betty Smith, mother, gardener, fighter, and she would protect her life, her legacy, with every ounce of strength she had. As Vivian stood in my garden, her gaze swept over the blooming flowers, her face a mask of unreadable emotions. The morning sun cast soft shadows, but her presence felt heavy, weighted with purpose. "I heard about yesterday," she said, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of disapproval. "Richard called me, terribly upset." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a familiar knot tighten in my chest. Richard, my son-in-law, had always been quick to defend his actions. But upset? That was Rich. I kept my tone even, masking the storm of emotions swirling inside. "So, I imagine he was," I replied, watching her closely, unsure of her intentions. Was she here to plead her son's case? To convince me to forgive him and Amanda for their betrayal? Or was this about something else entirely? To my surprise, Vivian's next words cut through my assumptions like a sharp blade. "What they did was utterly deplorable," she said, her voice firm, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "It showed a complete disregard for basic human decency." I blinked, stunned, certain I'd misheard. My hands, still dusted with garden soil, froze mid-motion. "I'm sorry," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper, my mind racing to process her unexpected stance. "You heard me correctly," she said, unflinching, her gaze steady as if daring me to challenge her. "I may have my opinions on many things, but trying to force you into a facility without your consent and attempting to sell your home behind your back, that crosses every line of respect and dignity." Her words hit me like a wave, stirring a mix of relief and disbelief. I'd braced myself for a confrontation, expecting her to defend her son and my daughter, to argue their intentions were misguided but well-meaning. Instead, here she was, standing in my garden, condemning their actions with a clarity that mirrored my own outrage. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, my voice trembling slightly, still grappling with the weight of her support. Inside, I felt a flicker of warmth, a small spark of validation amidst the raw pain of Amanda's betrayal. Vivian sniffed, her posture as rigid as ever, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Don't misunderstand me," she said sharply, as if to ward off any sentimentality. I'm not here to become your confidant or forge some newfound friendship. I'm here because I'm old enough to see the writing on the wall. What Amanda and Richard tried to do to you could just as easily happen to me if I don't set my own boundaries now. Her pragmatism was almost jarring, but it carried a truth I couldn't ignore. She reached into her handbag with deliberate precision and pulled out a crisp white envelope, extending it to me with a steady hand. "This is the contact information for my personal attorney," she said. "She specializes in elder law and estate planning. She's fierce when she needs to be. I've already spoken to her about your situation, and she's willing to meet with you if you want a second opinion beyond your current legal counsel." I took the envelope, my fingers brushing against the smooth paper, and a quiet gratitude bloomed within me despite her cool delivery. "Thank you, Vivian," I said softly, touched by the gesture. "That's very thoughtful." She waved off my words with a curt gesture. "It's practical," she corrected, her tone brisk. "Women our age need to protect ourselves, even from our own children when necessary." She paused, her eyes softening for a fleeting moment before hardening again. "I've also made it clear to Richard that I find his behavior in this matter utterly reprehensible. He may be my son, but that doesn't mean I condone his actions." With that, she gave a sharp nod, turned on her heel, and began to walk away, her back as straight as a rod, her steps purposeful. But at the edge of my garden, she paused and glanced back, her eyes catching the vibrant daylilies swaying in the breeze. "Your daylilies are quite lovely," she said, almost as an afterthought. "I've never had much luck with them myself." Before I could respond, she was already striding toward her car, leaving me standing there, hands still stained with earth, clutching an envelope that held the contact details of one of the city's most formidable attorneys. As I watched her drive away, a quiet realization settled over me. Life, with all its betrayals and surprises, never stopped teaching us new lessons. By early afternoon, a messenger from Franklin's office arrived with a stack of updated legal documents. I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the window, and read through each page with care. The words were a fortress, spelling out my autonomy, my right to make my own medical decisions, to control my property, to live independently, all in clear, irrefutable terms. With each signature, I felt a weight lift, a sense of security wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I sent copies to my sons, David and Daniel, filed the originals in my home safe, and emailed digital versions to Franklin for his records. Yet even as I fortified my defenses, the emotional wound of Amanda's betrayal throbbed, raw and unhealed. How could my own daughter, the child I'd poured my heart into, see me as little more than an obstacle to be managed? As I pondered what to make for dinner, the doorbell rang again, pulling me from my thoughts. This time it was Eleanor Winthrop, the chair of the Pinerest board, her warm smile a stark contrast to Vivian's stern demeanor. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, her voice kind but direct. "I was in the neighborhood and wanted to check on you after yesterday's incident." Unlike Vivian's unexpected visit, Eleanor's felt like a balm, a reminder of the connections I'd built over years of advocacy. "Not at all," I said, gesturing her inside. "I was just about to make tea. Would you like some?" We settled in my living room, steaming mugs in hand, the air filled with the comforting aroma of chamomile. Eleanor didn't bother with small talk, her straightforward nature, one of the things I'd always admired. "Jerome filled me in on everything," she said, her brow furrowing with concern. "I'm appalled at what your daughter and son-in-law tried to do, Betty." Her words echoed my own feelings, and for a moment I let myself be vulnerable. "So am I admitted, my voice heavy with the weight of disappointment. "Amanda's been pushing me to downsize for years, but I never imagined she'd go this far." Eleanor nodded, her expression a mix of sympathy and understanding. "It's more common than you'd think," she said, her tone tinged with sadness. "At Pinerest, we see families making decisions for their elderly relatives without their consent far too often. That's why your work on the Resident Rights Committee has been so vital. You've always fought for dignity and autonomy, even in assisted living." Her words stirred a quiet pride in me, a reminder that my efforts had made a difference, even if my own daughter couldn't see my worth. We talked for nearly an hour, Eleanor offering both emotional support and practical advice drawn from her years as board chair. Before she left, she surprised me with an invitation that caught me off guard. We're having a special meeting next week to discuss the new East Wing expansion, she said. You've always been passionate about creating affordable units for middle-income seniors. Would you consider chairing the planning committee? Your perspective would be invaluable. The request sent a jolt through me. I'd been an active board member, but chairing a major project was a significant step. Are you sure, Eleanor? I asked, my voice tinged with uncertainty. That's a big responsibility. She didn't hesitate. Absolutely certain, she replied, her eyes bright with conviction. Recent events have shown you understand both the practical and emotional challenges of late life transitions. Besides, she added with a warm smile, a project like this might be just what you need right now. She was right. Dwelling on Amanda's betrayal would only drag me deeper into pain. A meaningful project, one that could help others avoid the kind of violation I'd faced, felt like a lifeline. I'd be honored, I told her, my voice steady with resolve. Thank you for thinking of me. After she left, a renewed sense of purpose settled over me. Yes, my relationship with Amanda was fractured, perhaps beyond repair. Yes, I'd been forced to confront the painful truth that the daughter I'd sacrificed so much for saw me as an inconvenience. But I still had value, still had work to do. That evening, a text from Amanda lit up my phone. Mom, please call me. We need to talk about what happened. Richard and I were only trying to help. The words stung, her claim of good intentions, a hollow excuse for her actions. I set the phone down, choosing silence over a confrontation I wasn't ready for. Instead, I opened my laptop and dove into research on innovative assisted living models, jotting down ideas for the planning committee. If Pinerest was going to expand, I'd ensure it did so with utmost respect for resident dignity and independence, the very things Amanda and Richard had tried to strip from me. The next morning, as I sipped coffee on my back porch, the phone rang. It was Jerome from Pinerest, his voice warm but professional. Betty, I wanted to update you on something, he said. Amanda and Richard came by yesterday, demanding a refund of their deposit. When I explained our no refund policy, they got quite insistent. My cheeks flushed with embarrassment at the thought of my daughter's behavior. I'm sorry they put you in that position, I said sincerely. Jerome chuckled, unfazed. No need to apologize. We deal with difficult situations all the time. In fact, I found a creative solution. I offered to convert their deposit into a scholarship fund for staff pursuing nursing degrees, complete with a plaque acknowledging their generous donation. I couldn't help but smile. How did they take it? I asked, picturing their reaction. Let's just say they weren't thrilled about having their names tied to Pinerest permanently, Jerome said, amusement in his voice. But they agreed, if only to save face in front of the staff. After we hung up, I sat quietly, savoring the irony. Amanda and Richard's attempt to control me had backfired, their actions now funding opportunities for others to grow and thrive. It was a small but satisfying twist of fate. Over the next few days, I threw myself into preparations for the committee meeting, researching and sketching out ideas for a new kind of senior living space, one that empowered residents, giving them as much control as possible over their lives. The work was a lifeline, pulling me out of the shadow of betrayal and into a space of purpose and possibility. By the time the meeting arrived, I had crafted a detailed presentation outlining my vision, a community that balanced support with independence, where dignity wasn't just a buzzword, but a lived reality. As I stood before the committee, their attentive faces reflecting the weight of my words, I felt a spark of hope. Amanda's actions had wounded me, but they hadn't broken me. I was still here, still fighting, still building a legacy that would outlast the pain. The room buzzed with energy as the committee members leaned forward, their faces lit with enthusiasm for my proposal. Many of them carried personal stories of parents or grandparents navigating the delicate balance of aging in care facilities, places where dignity often clashed with the necessity of assistance. They had seen the struggle up close, the frustration of loved ones forced to surrender independence too soon or too abruptly. My idea of a flexible, graduated system of support struck a deep chord. I envisioned a community where residents could start in independent apartments equipped with subtle accessibility features, discreet grab bars, wider doorways, voice-activated lighting, and transition seamlessly to more intensive care as their needs evolved, all without the upheaval of relocation. One member, her voice trembling with conviction, captured the heart of it. This is what we've been missing. Options that grow with the person, not ones that force them to start over every time something changes. Her words echoed in my mind, affirming the urgency of this vision. By the meeting's end, the committee had greenlit my proposal for further development, tasking me with crafting detailed plans and budget projections. As chair, I would spearhead this next phase, collaborating with architects, healthcare experts, and financial advisors to breathe life into this dream. Driving home from Pinerest, the golden light of late afternoon spilling across the dashboard, I felt a surge of purpose that electrified me. The weight of Amanda's betrayal, a wound that had once consumed me, still lingered, but it no longer held me hostage. The anger and hurt had receded, making room for something new, a clarity of mission, a sense that I was exactly where I needed to be. Allies had emerged from unexpected corners, Lelenor's steadfast encouragement, Jerome's quiet wisdom, my son's unwavering loyalty, and most surprisingly, Vivian Palmer's fierce advocacy. Each had become a pillar in this new chapter, reminding me that community could deepen with time, not fade. Pulling into my driveway, I spotted David's car parked along the curb, a familiar sight that warmed my heart. He sat on the front porch steps, a small cooler at his side, his posture relaxed but attentive. "David," I called, stepping out of the car, my voice bright with surprise. "Is everything okay?" He rose, enveloping me in a hug that felt like home, his arms strong and steady. "Everything's fine, Mom," he said, his smile easy. "I had a client meeting nearby and thought I'd swing by. Mary sent dinner." He nodded toward the cooler. "Her famous lasagna and that crusty garlic bread you love." The gesture, so simple yet so thoughtful, brought a sting of tears to my eyes. "That's so kind of her, and you, for bringing it," I managed, my voice thick with gratitude. David's grin widened, a playful glint in his eyes. "Well, it's not entirely selfless. I was hoping you'd share." Inside, as I warmed the lasagna, the kitchen filled with the comforting aroma of tomato and melted cheese. David leaned against the counter, catching me up on his life, his latest projects at work, his kids' endless activities, Mary's new role at the university. His words flowed easily, painting a picture of a life both hectic and full. The normalcy of it soothed me, a balm after the strain of recent days. As we sat down to eat, his expression shifted, a quiet seriousness settling over him. "How are you doing, Mom?" "Really?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I paused, letting the question sink in. "Better than I thought I'd be," I admitted. Amanda's actions hurt deeply, but they've also forced me to see things clearly. Patterns I ignored for years are undeniable now. I'm taking steps to protect myself, to set boundaries. David's brow furrowed, concern etched into his features. "You sure you don't want me to talk to her?" he pressed, his voice low but firm. I shook my head, resolute. "No, David, this is between Amanda and me. She needs to face the consequences of her choices, and that understanding has to come from her, not you or Daniel stepping in." He nodded, though I could sense his reluctance, the protective instinct he couldn't quite suppress. "Just know we're here," he said softly. "Daniel and I, whatever you need." After dinner, we stood side by side at the sink, washing dishes in companionable silence. David broke it with a casual invitation. "By the way, Mary and I are thinking of taking the kids to the beach house for the 4th of July. We'd love for you to come." The beach house, a cozy rental on the coast, was their summer tradition. I'd joined them a few times over the years, but often declined, wary of intruding on their family time. "Are you sure?" I asked, hesitant. "I wouldn't want to impose." David shot me a look, half exasperated, half fond. "Mom, you could never impose. The kids adore you, and Mary and I love having you there. Plus," he added with a grin, "you're the only one who can get Emily to wear sunscreen without a fight." I laughed, picturing my stubborn 14-year-old granddaughter, who bristled at her parents' rules but somehow accepted the same advice from me with a grudging nod. "In that case, I'd love to come," I said, already imagining the salty breeze and the sound of waves. "It'll be nice to have something to look forward to." After David left, I sank into the quiet of my living room, reflecting on the stark contrast between my relationships with my children. With David and Daniel, there was a mutual respect, a genuine curiosity about each other's lives, a balance of independence and connection that felt effortless. With Amanda, it had always been different, a constant push and pull. My efforts to support her without overstepping were met with either cold distance or attempts to manipulate the dynamic in her favor. The betrayal had only sharpened that divide, but it had also freed me to focus on what truly mattered. The next morning, I arrived at Gabriela Torres's office, a beautifully restored historic building downtown. Its understated elegance, polished wood floors, soft lighting put me at ease. Gabriela greeted me with a firm handshake and a direct, warm gaze that radiated competence. "Mrs. Palmer gave me a broad overview of your situation," she said as we settled into her office, "but I'd like to hear it from you, if you don't mind." I recounted the painful saga with Amanda and Richard, detailing the steps I'd taken with Franklin to revise my advance directives and power of attorney. Gabriella listened intently, her pen occasionally scratching notes. When I finished, she nodded, her expression one of quiet approval. "You've laid a solid foundation," she said, "but there are additional safeguards we can explore." She outlined a comprehensive trust structure that would further shield my assets from unauthorized access, as well as the option of a geriatric care manager, an impartial third party to assess my needs if my capacity were ever questioned. "Think of it as a safety net," she said, her tone practical yet reassuring. "You don't expect a crisis, but these measures ensure your wishes are ironclad if one arises." Her approach was refreshingly empowering, devoid of fear-mongering, and by the time I left, I felt a newfound sense of control over my future. Stepping into the sunlight, I spotted a charming cafe across the street with inviting outdoor seating. On a whim, I crossed over and ordered a turkey and avocado sandwich, savoring the simple joy of watching passers-by, young couples, professionals on lunch breaks, an elderly man feeding sparrows. A quiet contentment washed over me, not the fleeting rush of happiness, but something deeper, more grounded. Amanda's betrayal still cast a shadow, but they no longer defined me. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Planning Committee MTG confirmed for Tuesday 10 a.m. Architects are thrilled with your concepts. This is happening, Betty." I smiled, my mind already racing with refinements for the new wing's design. Sleek grab bars disguised as decorative molding, smart home features tailored to each resident's needs, doorways that welcomed mobility aids without screaming facility. Tuesday dawned bright, and I dressed with intention, slipping into a cornflower blue blazer that David always said brought out my eyes. Professional, approachable, it was the perfect armor for chairing the committee. Driving to Pinerest, I rehearsed my presentation, eager to unveil the architectural firm's preliminary designs. Jerome met me in the lobby, his steady presence a quiet anchor. The betrayal that had been meant to break me had instead ignited a new purpose. Whatever lay ahead with Amanda and Richard, I would face it on my own terms, with my dignity unshaken and my autonomy fiercely guarded. As I walked alongside Jerome toward the conference room, a current of excitement pulsed through me, tempered by the weight of responsibility. His eyes sparkled with genuine enthusiasm as he spoke, his voice brimming with anticipation. "Betty, you're going to be floored when you see what the architects have crafted from your ideas. It's nothing short of groundbreaking, leagues beyond the cookie-cutter senior living designs we're used to." His words stirred a quiet pride in me, but also a flicker of disbelief. Could my vision, born from years of frustration and quiet observation, really be taking shape in such a transformative way? We chatted about budgets and funding as we moved through Pinerest's familiar halls, the hum of possibility weaving through our conversation. The scholarship fund, established through Amanda and Richard's unexpected donation, had sparked a wave of positive attention. Local businesses, eager to align with Pinerest's mission, were now circling, offering support for our expansion. The irony wasn't lost on Jerome. With a wry smile, he said, "It's almost poetic, isn't it? Your daughter's push to place you here against your wishes has ended up fueling a project that prioritizes dignity and independence for our residents." I returned his smile, a bittersweet warmth settling in my chest. Life has a peculiar way of turning pain into purpose, doesn't it? My daughter's actions, rooted in misunderstanding, had inadvertently set the stage for something far greater than any of us could have predicted. The planning committee meeting was a triumph that surpassed even my most hopeful expectations. As the architectural renderings were unveiled, gasps and murmurs of approval rippled through the room. The designs were vibrant, thoughtful, and alive with possibility. Nothing like the sterile institutional models I'd seen elsewhere. The graduated living concept, the heart of the project, drew particular praise. It allowed residents to stay within the same community as their needs changed, sparing them the upheaval of moving between care levels. Dr. Reeves, our resident geriatrician, leaned forward, her eyes alight with conviction. "This is revolutionary," she said, her voice steady but fervent. "We too often prioritize medical needs over emotional ones, splitting people apart based on care requirements without a thought for the relationships they have built. This model honors those connections." Her words resonated deeply with me. I thought of the residents I'd come to know over my 15 years on Pinerest's board, their friendships, their routines, the quiet comfort of familiarity. To preserve that felt like a victory in itself. By the meeting's end, we'd mapped out project timelines and delegated tasks with a clarity that left me energized. As chair, I would oversee the coordination with the architectural firm, ensuring the design and programming elements wove together seamlessly. The responsibility was daunting, but it filled me with purpose. As committee members gathered their notes and prepared to leave, Eleanor approached me, her expression a mix of determination and excitement. "Betty, the local news station reached out. They want to do an interview about the expansion, particularly the affordable housing piece. Would you be willing to speak with them as committee chair?" Her request caught me off guard, like a sudden gust of wind. Public speaking had never been my forte. I thrived in the quiet work of planning and problem solving, not under the glare of a camera. A flicker of doubt crept in. "Are you sure I'm the right person for this?" I asked, my voice tinged with hesitation. "You're the board chair. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to do it?" Eleanor shook her head, her gaze steady. "This is your vision, Betty. You talk about it with a passion that cuts through. And," she added with a knowing smile, "your personal story gives you a unique voice on senior autonomy and dignity." Her words landed like a quiet challenge, stirring a resolve I hadn't realized I possessed. How could I say no when this was a chance to amplify a cause so close to my heart? "All right," I said, nodding. "When do they want to do it?" "Tomorrow afternoon, if that works for you. They'll film here at Pinerest, showcasing our current facilities and the expansion plans." I agreed, already mentally reshuffling my schedule, a mix of nerves and determination settling in as I drove home. The thought of the interview loomed large. It would thrust Pinerest's mission and me into the public eye. Amanda would almost certainly see it, and the possibility of another confrontation with her gnawed at me. Our relationship, already strained, felt like a tightrope I was perpetually crossing. Yet I refused to let fear of her reaction dim my commitment. This project was bigger than our personal rift. It was about creating a future where seniors could live with dignity, not as burdens, but as individuals with agency. When I arrived home, I found a package waiting on my porch, a large, flat parcel wrapped in simple brown paper. Curiosity tugged at me as I carried it inside and carefully peeled back the wrapping. Inside was a framed architectural rendering of Pinerest's new wing, its lines bold and hopeful. A note from Jerome was tucked alongside it. "Thought you might like the first official glimpse of your vision coming to life, with gratitude for your leadership." The gesture hit me like a wave, unexpected and deeply moving. I hung the frame on my living room wall, where it would catch my eye daily. A quiet reminder that even amidst personal turmoil, I was part of something enduring. That evening, my phone rang, and Vivian Palmer's name flashed on the screen. Her voice, as always, carried that brisk efficiency, but beneath it was a warmth that still surprised me. "Betty, I spoke with Gabriela Torres," she began. "She said your meeting went well." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Very well. She had some sharp ideas about legal protections for the project. Thank you for recommending her." "Good," Vivian replied, then paused, her tone shifting. "I also wanted you to know that Amanda and Richard came to dinner last night. They mentioned they're considering legal action to have you declared incompetent." My grip on the phone tightened, a surge of indignation rising in my chest. "On what grounds?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. I'm clearly capable of managing my life. Vivian's response was dry, almost amused. Exactly what I told them. I made it clear that if they pursue this baseless claim, they'll do so without my support, financial or otherwise. The weight of her words settled over me. Vivian, with her formidable influence over her son and, by extension, Amanda, had just drawn a line in the sand. Her stance could shift the entire dynamic. I appreciate that, I said carefully, still processing the unlikely alliance forming between us. It wasn't entirely selfless, Vivian admitted, her candor catching me off guard. I have no interest in setting a precedent where adult children can strip their parents' autonomy based on age alone. Besides, she added, her voice softening, I've come to admire your strength, Betty. You've navigated this with a grace most wouldn't muster. Coming from Vivian Palmer, those words were a rare gift, and they lingered with me long after we hung up. Life, it seemed, had the way of forging allies in the unlikeliest of places. The next morning, I prepared for the interview with meticulous care, choosing a tailored blazer and skirt that felt both professional and authentic. I reviewed our talking points, determined to focus on the project's impact rather than my personal struggles. When I arrived at Pinerest, the news crew was already setting up in the garden courtyard, the morning light casting a soft glow over the flowers. A cameraman fiddled with his equipment while a young woman with a microphone pored over her notes. Jerome introduced me to Jessica Chen, the reporter, whose warm smile put me at ease. Mrs. Smith, it's a pleasure, she said, shaking my hand. I've heard such inspiring things about your work here. I deflected with a smile. It's a team effort, I said, gesturing to Jerome and Eleanor, who had joined us. Jessica's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Of course, but I hear you're the driving force behind the innovative approach to the new wing. I'd love to hear more. The interview began with broad questions about Pinerest's history and mission, gradually narrowing to the expansion. I explained the graduated living concept, the affordable housing component, and our commitment to resident autonomy. Jessica leaned in, her interest palpable. What inspired this vision? It's so different from traditional senior living. I took a deep breath, weighing how much of my story to share. Over my 15 years on Pinerest's board, I've seen how much autonomy matters to residents. Too often, society assumes aging equals incompetence, making decisions for older adults instead of with them. This project flips that script, creating spaces that adapt to people's needs while preserving their independence. Jessica nodded, urging me on. The interview flowed for 20 minutes, covering funding, timelines, and community impact. As we wrapped up, she asked, Mrs. Smith, you speak so passionately about autonomy in later life. What would you say to families navigating these transitions? I paused, aware that my words might reach Amanda. Listen to your loved ones, I said softly. Honor their voice and their choices. Aging doesn't diminish a person's right to shape their own life. As the camera shut off, I felt a quiet resolve. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, grounded in the belief that this work mattered, not just for Pinerest, but for every person who deserved to age with dignity. Betty Smith stood in the quiet of her living room, her heart still racing from the interview that had just wrapped. The news crew's lights had dimmed, their cameras packed away, but her words lingered in the air like an echo she couldn't quite shake. She had spoken with conviction, her voice steady as she declared that love and concern should never be twisted into tools for control. Supporting an aging parent, she had said, meant honoring their desires, even when those desires clashed with your own. It meant offering a hand without forcing it, recognizing that growing older didn't strip away a person's right to chart their own course. As she spoke, she had felt the weight of her own experience, her fall, the whispered plans to sell her house, the betrayal of being treated like a problem to be solved rather than a person with a voice. Jessica, the young reporter, had lingered after the camera stopped, her eyes bright with admiration. That was powerful, Mrs. Smith, she said, her voice warm with sincerity. Your perspective is going to resonate with so many families grappling with these tough decisions. Betty felt a flush of pride, but also a tremor of vulnerability. Speaking so openly, knowing her words would soon be broadcast to countless homes, stirred a mix of exhilaration and unease. What would people think? More pressingly, What would Amanda think? Jerome, her longtime friend and collaborator on the Pinerest expansion project, turned to her as the crew shuffled out. His smile was wide, his eyes crinkling with approval. "You were brilliant, Betty," he said, his voice rich with pride. Passionate, clear, and exactly the voice this project needs to inspire people. His words bolstered her, but a flicker of nerves surfaced as she asked, "When will it air?" Her voice betrayed a hint of apprehension about stepping into the public eye. "Tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock news," Jessica called over her shoulder as she headed for the door. "It'll also be on our website and social media." Betty nodded, her mind swirling with pride and a creeping dread. The interview had felt right, like a moment of clarity, but the thought of Amanda watching it, her daughter so quick to take offense, gnawed at her. The next evening, as the segment aired, Betty sat in her armchair, her fingers clasped tightly in her lap. The television cast a soft glow across the room, her words filling the space with a strange mix of familiarity and distance. She barely recognized the woman on the screen. Confident, poised, a beacon of conviction. When the doorbell rang just minutes after the broadcast ended, her stomach tightened. A glance at the security camera revealed Amanda standing on the porch, her arms crossed tightly, her posture radiating a storm of emotions. Anger, hurt, perhaps even shame. Taking a deep breath, Betty opened the door, bracing herself. "Hello, Amanda," she said, her voice calm but guarded. "I just saw you on the news," Amanda said, her words sharp and immediate, slicing through any pretense of small talk. "You did that on purpose, didn't you? To humiliate us in front of everyone." Her voice trembled, not just with anger, but with a raw edge of betrayal, as if Betty's public words had reopened a wound she hadn't fully acknowledged. Betty stepped back, gesturing for Amanda to come inside. "Let's not give the neighbors a show," she said gently, though her heart pounded. As Amanda stepped into the living room, her eyes immediately locked onto the framed architectural rendering on the wall, a vision of Pinerest's future, a project Betty had poured her heart into. "The interview was about the expansion project, Amanda," Betty said, her tone even but firm. "It had nothing to do with you or Richard." Amanda's laugh was bitter, her gaze still fixed on the rendering as if it held some hidden accusation. "Right, nothing to do with us. That's why you made that comment about love and concern, not justifying control. You might as well have put our names in neon lights." Her voice cracked, revealing a flicker of vulnerability beneath her defensiveness. Betty could see it, the way Amanda's shoulders tensed, the way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her sleeve. This wasn't just anger, it was fear. Fear of being seen as the villain, of losing face in a world where appearances mattered so much to her. "I was speaking about a principle I believe in," Betty replied, her voice steady but not unkind. "It wasn't about you specifically, but if it struck a chord, maybe there's a reason." She watched Amanda's face flush, a mix of embarrassment and defiance flaring in her eyes. "So now you're some kind of crusader for elder rights?" Amanda shot back, her words dripping with sarcasm. "All because we tried to keep you safe after your fall. Is that it?" Her voice wavered, caught between indignation and something softer, something that hinted at guilt she wasn't ready to face. Betty felt a pang in her chest, not anger but a deep sadness for the distance between them. "Is that really what you were doing?" she asked quietly. "Ensuring my safety by making decisions about my home, my care without even asking me? By trying to sell my house behind my back?" Her words were gentle but unyielding, each one landing like a stone in still water, rippling through the tension in the room. Amanda's eyes flashed, but her voice softened, as if the weight of Betty's words had caught her off guard. "We were worried about you," she insisted, her tone almost pleading. "That fall could have been so much worse. If no one had found you in time." She trailed off, her gaze dropping to the floor, and for a moment Betty saw the fear that had driven her daughter's actions. Not just fear for Betty's safety, but fear of losing her, of being the one who failed to protect her. "Then the answer," Betty said, her voice soft but resolute, "would have been to talk to me, to ask what I needed, to respect me enough to include me in decisions about my own life. Instead, you decided I was too frail, too incapable to know what was best for myself." She paused, letting the words settle, watching as Amanda began to pace the room, her movements restless, almost frantic. Amanda's agitation was palpable, each step a reflection of the storm inside her. "And now grandmother's taking your side," she said, her voice rising. "She's threatening to cut Richard off if we pursue guardianship. Do you have any idea how that makes us look to his family?" Her words spilled out, raw and unfiltered, revealing the heart of her distress. Not just concern for Betty, but a deeper worry about social standing, about how this conflict painted her in the eyes of others. Betty's heart ached at the realization. Amanda's pain wasn't just about their fractured relationship, it was about the image she so carefully curated, now crumbling under the weight of public scrutiny. "Vivian made her own judgment," Betty said calmly. "I didn't ask her to intervene." "But you're happy to let her," Amanda snapped, her voice sharp but tinged with desperation. "Just like you're happy to go on TV, presenting yourself as this wise, independent woman while making us look like monsters. Is that how you see me? As a villain?" Her eyes searched Betty's, a mix of defiance and a desperate need for understanding. Betty paused, considering her daughter's question, feeling the weight of it. "No, Amanda," she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet sincerity. "I don't see you as a villain. I see you as my daughter, someone I love deeply, even when we don't see eye to eye. I see someone who made a mistake, a serious one, but who still has the chance to recognize it and make things right." Her words were a bridge, an invitation to something better, though she knew Amanda might not be ready to cross it. Amanda stopped pacing, her shoulders slumping as she turned to face Betty. Her expression was a tangle of emotions, frustration, embarrassment, and perhaps the faintest glimmer of regret. "And how am I supposed to do that?" she asked, her voice quieter now, almost vulnerable. "You've changed your legal papers to cut me out. You barely talk to me. You've got David, Daniel, even Richard's mother against me." "I haven't turned anyone against you," Betty said gently, her heart heavy with the truth of it. "I've only shared what happened. How others respond to that is their choice, not mine." She took a step closer, her voice steady but warm. "What I want from you isn't just an apology, Amanda. It's acknowledgement. Not just that you didn't consult me, but that you saw me as less than a person, as something to be managed rather than someone to be heard." Amanda sank onto the sofa, her energy seeming to drain from her. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to get back to what we had." Betty sat across from her heart torn between hope and honesty. "I'm not sure we can or should go back," she said. "What we had wasn't built on mutual respect. Maybe what we need is something new, something where we see each other as we truly are." Her words were gentle but unflinching, a call to rebuild on firmer ground. Amanda's eyes met hers, a flicker of curiosity breaking through her defenses. "And what would that look like?" she asked, her voice softer, almost tentative. "It would start with you seeing me as I am," Betty said, her voice warm with possibility. "Not just as your mother or an aging woman, but as Betty Smith, a person with work I care about, with friends and dreams and goals. It would mean taking an interest in my life, respecting my choices, even when they're not what you choose for me." Amanda was silent, her gaze fixed on her hands, her fingers twisting together as she processed her mother's words. "I saw you on that news segment," she said finally, her voice quiet but earnest. "You looked different, confident, like you had a purpose. It made me realize I don't know much about your life outside of being my mom." It was a small admission, but it carried weight, a crack in the wall that had grown between them. Betty felt a spark of hope, fragile but real. "Would you like to know more?" she asked, her voice gentle, an invitation rather than a demand. Amanda hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe, yes." Then with a visible effort to bridge the gap, she asked, "What exactly is this expansion project you are working on?" Betty's heart lifted as she reached for the architectural rendering, bringing it over to share. "We're creating a new wing at Pinerest that reimagines senior living," she said, her voice alive with passion. "Let me show you what makes it special." For the next hour, she walked Amanda through the project, the innovative designs, the programs aimed at fostering community, the financial model that made it accessible to middle-income seniors. To her surprise, Amanda listened intently, asking questions that showed a genuine curiosity, a willingness to see her mother in a new light. As their conversation drew to a close, Amanda glanced at her watch and stood. I should go. Richard will be wondering where I am. At the door, she paused, her hand resting on the frame. Mom, I'm not ready to say you were completely right and I was completely wrong, she said, her voice halting but sincere. But I can admit we handled things badly, and I can see now that there's more to your life than I realized. Betty's heart swelled, though she knew this was only a beginning. Thank you for saying that, she said softly, and for listening tonight. After Amanda left, Betty sat in the quiet of her living room, the weight of their conversation settling over her. There had been moments of connection, fleeting but real, glimpses of a relationship that could grow into something stronger, more honest. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't happen quickly. But for the first time since their painful confrontation at Pinerest, Betty felt a cautious optimism, a belief that reconciliation, however slow, was possible. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. The Pinerest expansion project demanded her full attention, with planning committee meetings to finalize architectural details and craft a fundraising strategy. The news segment had sparked a wave of community interest, with local businesses reaching out to explore partnerships or offer donations. Betty was deep in budget projections when her phone rang, David's voice crackling with excitement on the other end. Mom, have you seen the newspaper this morning? He asked, his enthusiasm infectious. No, not yet. Why? Betty replied, her curiosity piqued. There's a feature article about you in the Pinerest project, he said. Front page of the lifestyle section. They're calling you a visionary advocate for dignified aging. His pride was palpable, and Betty felt a rush of warmth mixed with disbelief. A visionary? Her? The idea was humbling, but it also fueled her determination to see the project through, to prove that aging could be a time of purpose and independence, not just decline. As she hung up, she couldn't help but wonder if Amanda would read the article and what she might see in the woman it described. The phone nearly slipped from my hand when David shared the news. My heart skipped a beat, a mix of shock and curiosity swirling within me. A newspaper article? How had this come about? Apparently, the recent TV segment about the Pinerest expansion had sparked a wave of enthusiasm, prompting the local paper to dive deeper with a feature story. David's voice carried a playful warmth as he chuckled through the line. Mom, you're practically a local legend now. I let out a soft groan, the idea of being in the spotlight making my stomach twist with unease. Oh, honey, I'm not sure I'm cut out for fame, I murmured, my voice tinged with self-consciousness. I just hope they got the details right about the project. David reassured me with a grin I could hear through the phone. They nailed it, Mom. It's a solid piece, thoughtful, well-researched, and it really captures what you're doing. But the best part? The way they talk about you. Listen to this. Betsy Smith brings a rare blend of practical wisdom and forward-thinking vision to her role, drawing on 15 years of board experience and a lifetime of facing challenges with grace and tenacity. My cheeks flushed at the words, a warmth spreading through me that was equal parts pride and discomfort. The praise felt like a spotlight, too bright for my liking. That's awfully kind of them, I said, deflecting slightly, but the project itself is what matters. It's the real star. David wasn't having it. Mom, take the compliment. You've earned every word. His insistence was gentle but firm, and I could feel his pride radiating through the phone, wrapping around me like a hug. Then he shifted gears, his tone brightening. By the way, Mary and I were thinking, before we head out for the beach trip, we'd love to throw a small dinner party to celebrate your new role as committee chair. Nothing too fancy, just close friends and family. What do you think? The offer caught me off guard, stirring a quiet joy in my chest, but also a flicker of hesitation. My thoughts immediately drifted to Amanda. Would she be there? The question hung in my mind, heavy with the weight of our recent tensions. After a brief pause, David answered carefully. That's up to you, Mom. It's your celebration, so you call the shots on the guest list. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tracing the edge of the phone as I weighed my options. Excluding Amanda might widen the gap between us, especially after our last conversation, which had shown fragile signs of progress. Tentative but real. Inviting her, though, risked casting a shadow over the evening if old grievances resurfaced. My heart tugged in both directions, but I wanted to believe in the possibility of healing. Invite her, I said finally, my voice steady but soft. And Richard, too. But make it clear this is about celebrating the project, not digging up family disputes. David's response was warm, reassuring. Got it, Mom. We'll keep it positive. Then his tone softened further, carrying a depth of emotion that caught me off guard. And Mom, I'm so proud of you, not just for Pinerest, but for how you've handled everything lately. You're stronger than you know. His words settled into my heart, soothing a part of me I hadn't realized needed comforting. Thank you, sweetheart, I whispered, my voice thick. That means more than you know. After we hung up, I walked slowly to the end of my driveway, the morning air crisp against my skin. The newspaper waited there, folded neatly, and I felt a flutter of nerves as I picked it up. Sure enough, there I was in the lifestyle section, standing in Pinerest's garden with architectural renderings spread out before me like a map of dreams. The article was everything David had promised, thoughtful, detailed, and focused on the innovative aspects of the expansion, from sustainable design to community-centered spaces. But it was the personal touches that caught me off guard. One quote in particular stopped me in my tracks. When asked what drives her passion for this work, Smith reflected, "Every one of us hopes to age with dignity, surrounded by community rather than isolated by institutional walls. This project isn't just about building better facilities. It's about creating spaces where people can continue to grow, connect, and contribute throughout their later years." Reading my own words in print felt surreal, like glimpsing a piece of my soul laid bare. I hadn't realized how deeply I'd articulated my vision during the interview, but seeing it now brought a clarity that anchored me. This wasn't just a project to prove Amanda wrong or to counter her attempts to control my choices. It was a reflection of everything I'd always believed in: autonomy, connection, purpose, no matter one's age. I stood there for a moment, the newspaper crinkling in my hands, feeling a quiet pride bloom within me, tempered by the humility of knowing how much work still lay ahead. The article's impact rippled far beyond what I'd expected. By week's end, my inbox was overflowing with invitations to speak at 3 local community organizations about innovations in senior living. Each request felt like both an honor and a responsibility, a chance to share the vision that had become my lifeline. Eleanor, my colleague and friend, was over the moon about the publicity. "Betty, this is huge," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The attention is already turning into funding commitments for the expansion. People are inspired." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I couldn't help but smile even as I marveled at how quickly things were moving. The most unexpected call came from Vivian Palmer, whose voice carried its usual blend of pragmatism and understated warmth. "Betty, the Garden Club voted unanimously to create a therapeutic garden for the new wing," she announced. "Raised beds for residents with mobility challenges, fully accessible pathways, the works. We'll fund the installation and provide volunteers for maintenance. I'll be leading the committee myself." My heart swelled at the generosity of the gesture. "Vivian, that's incredible," I said, my voice catching slightly. "The residents will thrive having that connection to nature." She responded with her characteristic dry humor. "Well, studies show gardening reduces stress and boosts cognitive function in older adults. Plus, I'm tired of planning charity galas where half the budget goes to flowers that wilt in a week." I laughed, appreciating her candor. "I'm excited to work with you on this, Vivian." She paused, then added, "Oh, and Betty, Amanda called me yesterday. She seemed different, less guarded. She even asked about my involvement with Pinerest. I think your talk with her might have struck a chord." The news sent a cautious spark of hope through me. "I hope so," I replied softly. "We've got a long road ahead, but any step forward is something." As the dinner party at David and Mary's approached, I found myself caught in a swirl of emotions, excitement tinged with apprehension. I hadn't seen Amanda since our conversation after the TV segment, and the thought of facing her in a social setting stirred a quiet unease. Would she be open, or would the old tensions resurface? When I arrived at David's house, the warmth of the gathering immediately enveloped me. Friends and colleagues filled the room: Franklin and his wife, Eleanor and her husband Jerome, and a handful of David and Mary's close friends. Daniel, my other son, had driven in from out of town with his family, his presence a rare and cherished gift. The air buzzed with easy laughter and conversation, a tapestry of voices weaving together in celebration. Amanda and Richard arrived 20 minutes later, and for a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. I felt my pulse quicken, but Mary, ever the gracious host, glided over with a warm smile, guiding them toward the appetizers with effortless charm. I took a deep breath and approached them, determined to set a positive tone. "Amanda, Richard, I'm so glad you could make it," I said, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. Richard gave a stiff nod, his discomfort palpable. "Congratulations, Betty, the project sounds innovative." I chose to take his words at face value, ignoring the undercurrent of formality. "Thank you, Richard. We're excited about what it could mean for the community." Amanda's eyes scanned the room, taking in the crowd with a mix of curiosity and surprise. "I didn't realize you knew so many people, Mom, or that they knew you." Her tone teetered on the edge of something I couldn't quite place, admiration perhaps, or disbelief. I smiled gently. "These are friends and colleagues I've worked with over the years, people who share the same passions." She hesitated, then added, "I read the article. It was impressive. Your quote about aging with dignity, it made me think." Before I could respond, Mary called us to dinner, and the moment slipped away. At the table, I found myself seated between Daniel and Franklin, with Amanda and Richard across from me. The conversation flowed easily, centered mostly on the Pinerest project. Guests asked thoughtful questions about the expansion's design, its funding, and its potential to redefine senior living. To my surprise, Richard chimed in occasionally, his finance background lending insight into the funding strategies we were exploring. His contributions were measured but genuine, and I felt a flicker of hope that he, too, might be warming to the project's vision. As dessert was served, David stood, raising his glass with a smile that radiated pride. "To my mother, Betty Smith," he began, his voice steady and warm. "Mom, your vision for Pinerest embodies everything we've always admired about you. Your compassion, your practical wisdom, and your fierce belief that everyone deserves dignity, no matter their age. We're so proud of you and thrilled to see your ideas come to life." The room echoed with "hear, hear" as glasses clinked, and I felt my cheeks burn with a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. "Thank you all," I said, my voice soft but sincere. "But this project is a team effort. Every one of you has played a part, through expertise, support, or simply believing in the dream when it was just a spark." As the evening wound down, guests began to drift away, and I found myself alone with Amanda for a quiet moment. She approached me, her expression tentative but open. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about seeing you as a whole person, not just my mother. I haven't been great at that. It's a lot to unlearn." Her honesty caught me off guard, and I felt a lump rise in my throat. "It's a shift for both of us," I said gently. "It takes time." She nodded, then added, "Richard and I are visiting his sister in California next month, but when we're back, maybe we could have lunch, just us. I'd like to hear more about Pinerest." The invitation was small but significant, a fragile bridge extended across the divide between us. "I'd love that," I replied, my heart lifting. Driving home that night, I replayed the evening in my mind, the laughter, the warmth, the tentative steps toward reconciliation. The road ahead with Amanda was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a quiet hope that we might find our way back to each other. The Pinerest project, the article, the dinner, they were more than milestones, if I says. They were reminders of the values that had always guided me: connection, purpose, and the belief that every stage of life holds the potential for growth. As the stars glittered above, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace whatever came next. The evening air carried a gentle warmth, wrapping around me like a soft blanket as I sat surrounded by the love of friends and family. Their support felt like a steady anchor, grounding me after the storm of recent events. My work at Pinerest had earned recognition, a professional nod that filled me with quiet pride. But what struck me most was the subtle change in Amanda's demeanor. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a slight softening in her words, a flicker of remorse in her eyes. These moments didn't erase the sting of her betrayal or mend the fractured trust between us, but they hinted at something new, a fragile possibility of healing, of building something stronger from the ashes of our shared pain. The hurt lingered, sharp and raw, but I could feel the edges beginning to blur, softened by the promise of growth. The following week, I joined David's family for a beach trip, a welcome escape from the emotional weight of recent days. The rental house sat just steps from the ocean, its weathered deck offering a front row seat to the rhythmic dance of the waves. Each morning I rose early, slipping out before the sun climbed too high, and walked along the shore. The cool sand pressed against my feet, and the salty breeze carried a sense of renewal. My grandchildren, Emily and Michael, were bursts of joy, their laughter echoing as they pulled me into their world of beach games and treasure hunts for seashells. Their excitement at having Grandma Betty along warmed my heart, making me feel not just included, but cherished. Emily, with her bright eyes and endless curiosity, would race ahead, holding up a shell like it was a rare gem, while Michael trailed behind, meticulously sorting his finds. Their energy was infectious, pulling me out of my own head and into the present. On our last evening, we gathered on the deck, the sky ablaze with oranges and pinks as the sun dipped below the horizon. Emily nestled beside me on a lounge chair, her small frame curled against mine, her warmth a quiet comfort. "Grandma," she said, her voice soft but serious, "I saw you on TV. You looked really important, talking about that place for old people." Her words, so earnest and unfiltered, made me smile. I could see her trying to piece together the world I inhabited, one so different from her own. "Pinerest isn't just for old people, sweetheart," I explained, my voice gentle but firm. "It's a community where people can keep learning, growing, and contributing, even if they need a little extra help with daily tasks." I watched her face as she processed this, her brow furrowing in thought. "Like how Dad helps you carry your suitcase because it's heavy, but you still decide what to pack?" she asked, her analogy so simple yet so profound it caught me off guard. I nodded, my heart swelling at her insight. "Exactly, Em. The help is there when you need it, but the choices are still yours." She grinned, pleased with herself. "I think that's good," she declared. "Nobody likes being told what to do all the time, even kids." She paused, then added with a mischievous glint, "Especially kids." I laughed, giving her a playful nudge. "Especially teenagers," I teased, and her giggle filled the air, light and free. But then her expression shifted, growing serious again. "Mom said Aunt Amanda tried to make you move to one of those places without asking you first. Is that true?" The question hung between us, heavy with the weight of family secrets and unspoken hurts. I hesitated, my instinct to protect Emily from the messiness of adult conflicts warring with my desire to be honest. "It's a bit more complicated than that," I said carefully, choosing my words like stepping stones across a turbulent stream. "Sometimes people think they're helping by making decisions for someone else, but it doesn't always feel helpful to the person on the receiving end." Emily nodded, her eyes wise beyond her years. "Like when Mom signs me up for math camp because she thinks I need it, but I'd rather go to art camp." Her comparison was so apt it made me chuckle softly. "Something like that," I agreed. "The important thing is that Aunt Amanda and I are talking now, trying to understand each other better." Emily leaned her head against my shoulder, her hair tickling my cheek. "That's good," she murmured. "I like it when our family isn't fighting." Her words pierced me, a reminder of how deeply children feel the ripples of adult discord. "Me too, sweetheart," I whispered, wrapping my arm around her, pulling her close. "Me too." As the sunset faded and the first stars blinked into view, I felt a profound gratitude settle over me. This moment with Emily, the love of David's family, the meaningful work waiting for me at Pinerest, and even the tentative steps toward reconciliation with Amanda. All of it felt like a gift. The betrayal that had once loomed so large now seemed like a painful but necessary turning point, forcing me to stand up for myself, to dive deeper into work that gave me purpose, and to discover allies I hadn't realized I had. Like a forest fire, it had burned through my life, leaving destruction, but also clearing the way for new growth. As Emily and I counted the stars, I silently named my blessings, my autonomy, my renewed sense of purpose, my dignity. Whatever lay ahead, whether with Amanda, Pinerest, or the challenges of aging, I would face it on my terms, surrounded by a community that honored my right to do so. Returning home from the beach, I felt refreshed, as if the ocean air had washed away the last traces of bitterness. The time with David's family had given me space to breathe, to process the whirlwind of recent weeks, and to chart a path forward. The morning after my return, I woke early, settling on my back porch with a steaming cup of coffee. The dawn light filtered through the maple trees, casting dappled shadows across my garden. It had grown a little wild in my absence, daisies reaching for the sun, a clematis vine creeping beyond its trellis. But there was a quiet beauty in its untamed state, a reminder of life's resilience. My phone chimed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from Eleanor. "Welcome back. Major news to share. Can you come to Pinerest this morning? Board meeting at 10 a.m. Curiosity piqued, I replied immediately, my mind already racing. What could have prompted an unscheduled meeting? A funding issue for the expansion? A snag in the architectural plans? I dressed quickly, my thoughts swirling with possibilities, and headed to Pinerest. The lobby, usually a haven of calm, buzzed with excitement as I arrived. Jerome spotted me instantly, his face lit with a grin he couldn't contain. "Betty, thank goodness you're back," he said, his voice brimming with energy. "We've had the most extraordinary development." He leaned in, lowering his voice as if sharing a delicious secret. "The Westridge Foundation wants to fully fund the affordable housing component of our expansion." My breath caught. The Westridge Foundation was a titan in philanthropy, known for its selective, transformative grants. "The entire affordable housing component?" I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. "That's nearly $4 million. Jerome nodded, his smile widening. "Their director saw your TV interview and read the newspaper feature. She was moved by our vision for dignified aging across all socioeconomic lines. Their board voted unanimously to support us." The news was almost too big to grasp. Full funding would accelerate the project's timeline, allowing us to break ground far sooner than we dared hope. "There's more," Jerome added as we walked toward the boardroom. "The grant comes with a condition. They want you to be the public face of the project, including speaking at their annual gala next month. Their director was particularly inspired by your advocacy for senior autonomy." My stomach fluttered. Public speaking wasn't new to me, but a high-profile gala was daunting. Still, the opportunity to secure such funding for a cause I believed in was worth any nerves. "I'd be honored," I told Jerome, though my voice betrayed a hint of trepidation. "Though I'll need some coaching for that gala audience." He chuckled. "Eleanor's already on it. She suggested a communications consultant to polish your public speaking and handle the media interest this is bound to generate." As we entered the boardroom, the excited hum of conversation stilled. Eleanor stood at the head of the table, her poised demeanor barely containing her joy. "Betty, welcome back," she said warmly. "As Jerome likely told you, we've had extraordinary news in your absence." She gestured to a woman seated beside him, elegantly dressed and radiating quiet authority. "This is Catherine Westridge, director of the Westridge Foundation." I recognized her instantly from the society pages, a member of one of the city's oldest, wealthiest families. Her presence underscored the gravity of this moment. Catherine rose, extending her hand. "Mrs. Smith, it's a pleasure to meet you," she said, her handshake firm, her gaze direct. "Your advocacy for dignified aging has resonated deeply with our foundation." "Thank you, Ms. Westridge," I replied, my voice steady despite the weight of her words. "I'm humbled by your interest in our project." She smiled, waving off the formality. "Please call me Catherine, and there's no need for humility. Your vision for reimagining senior living aligns perfectly with our mission to support innovative community solutions. We're not just writing a check, we're investing in a model that could redefine how society approaches aging." The meeting unfolded with a detailed discussion of the grant's terms, the timeline for fund disbursement, and the foundation's expectations. As I listened, I felt a surge of purpose, tempered by the weight of responsibility. This wasn't just about Pinerest. It was about proving that dignity and autonomy could thrive at any age, in any circumstance, and I was ready to carry that vision forward, one step at a time. The meeting with the Westridge Foundation had left Betty buoyant yet introspective, her mind buzzing with the weight of newfound possibilities. Catherine, the foundation's poised and articulate representative, had been unequivocal. While the foundation's financial support for the affordable housing component of Pinerest's expansion was substantial, they wanted Betty and Pinerest itself to remain the public face of the project. "It's your authenticity that draws people in," Catherine had said, her voice warm but firm, her eyes locking onto Betty's with a sincerity that felt both flattering and daunting. "You don't speak about these issues as some distant theory. You've lived them, and that raw human truth connects with people in a way no polished institutional statement ever could." Those words lingered in Betty's mind, stirring a mix of pride and vulnerability. She had never seen herself as particularly compelling, yet here was someone of Catherine's stature affirming her impact. As the meeting wrapped up, a clear path forward had emerged. The architectural firm would finalize designs within weeks, and groundbreaking was now slated for early fall, a full 6 months ahead of the original schedule. The accelerated timeline thrilled Betty, but it also sent a ripple of anxiety through her. Could they pull this off? The board members, energized by the foundation's commitment, began to disperse, their voices a hum of optimism. But Catherine lingered, approaching Betty with a smile that hinted at something more. "Betty, would you join me for lunch? There's another piece of this project I'd like to discuss privately." Intrigued, Betty nodded, her curiosity piqued by Catherine's tone, equal parts professional and conspiratorial. Soon, Betty found herself seated across from Catherine at a sleek downtown restaurant, the kind of place where linen napkins were folded with precision and the staff moved with quiet efficiency. It was a world apart from the modest diners Betty frequented, and she felt a fleeting pang of self-consciousness as the host greeted Catherine by name, ushering them to a prime table by the window. Catherine, clearly at ease in this refined setting, wasted no time once their orders were placed. "Betty, the Westridge Foundation isn't just interested in funding bricks and mortar. We want to create something lasting within the new wing, a program focused on advocacy and education for elder rights and autonomy." Betty's heart quickened. The idea was electrifying. "That sounds incredible," she said, her voice brimming with genuine enthusiasm. "What would it involve?" Catherine leaned forward, her eyes alight with purpose. "We envision a center that empowers seniors. It would offer resources for navigating healthcare and housing decisions, legal workshops to protect personal autonomy, and training for healthcare providers to respect patient agency. Essentially, it would tackle the very challenges you've spoken about so powerfully in your interviews." Betty's mind raced, already picturing a bustling hub where older adults could find guidance and support, especially those, like her late friend Amanda, who lacked family or financial resources to advocate for themselves. "That would be a lifeline for so many," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion, "especially for those who feel invisible." Catherine's gaze softened, but her next words caught Betty entirely off guard. "And we'd like you to direct it." The offer landed like a thunderbolt, leaving Betty momentarily speechless. "Her? Direct a center? But I don't have formal qualifications in elder law or healthcare administration," she stammered, her hands tightening around her water glass. Catherine's smile was reassuring, almost maternal. "Betty, what you have is far rarer. You've lived these challenges. Your passion is palpable, and your work at Pinerest proves you can turn that passion into real change. We can hire technical experts. What we need is someone who gets it, someone who knows why this matters on a gut level." Betty took a slow sip of water, her thoughts swirling. The idea was exhilarating, but it was also a monumental responsibility. "It's an incredible opportunity," she admitted, her voice measured. "But it's a huge commitment. Would this be full-time?" "Initially, yes," Catherine replied smoothly. "Once the center is up and running, you could shift to an advisory role if you prefer. The foundation would offer a competitive salary and benefits naturally." She named a figure that made Betty's breath catch, a sum far beyond anything she'd earned as a librarian. The number hung in the air, both a promise and a challenge. "I'll need time to think about this," Betty said, her honesty disarming even to herself. "It's wonderful, but it would change my life completely." Catherine nodded, her expression kind but resolute. Take all the time you need, but know this, your voice has already moved mountains. Imagine what you could do with the full backing of the Westridge Foundation. As they finished their meal, Catherine dropped another surprise. By the way, I believe you know my cousin, Vivian Palmer. She speaks very highly of you, which trust me is rare. Vivian's approval is like pulling teeth. Betty blinked, caught off guard by the connection. Yes, I know Vivian. I had no idea you were related. Catherine chuckled. Second cousins. We're not close, but we cross paths on charitable boards. When your name came up at the foundation, Vivian was adamant about your integrity and talent. Coming from her, that's practically a knighthood. Betty laughed, picturing Vivian's stern, no-nonsense demeanor. She's been surprisingly supportive lately, she mused. Catherine's eyes twinkled. Life has a way of forging unexpected allies, doesn't it? Driving home, Betty's mind was a whirlwind. The director position wasn't just a job, it was a calling, a chance to channel her personal struggles into systemic change. At 68, when most people were easing into retirement, she was being offered a new beginning. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She decided to take the weekend to mull it over, planning to discuss it with her sons, David and Daniel, and to reflect on what such a leap would mean for her quiet, steady life. But first, she had to share the Westridge Foundation's grant with Pinerest's planning committee. She fired off a group email detailing the funding and the accelerated timeline, and within minutes, her inbox overflowed with replies. Excited congratulations, practical questions, and offers to take on extra tasks. Eleanor, ever the strategist, suggested a press conference the following week to announce the grant publicly, and Betty felt a surge of gratitude for the team's enthusiasm. That evening, Betty prepared a simple dinner and carried it to her back porch, settling into a wicker chair as the sky softened into dusk. The Westridge grant was a triumph, a validation of Pinerest's vision. But the job offer? That was personal. It was a recognition of the expertise she'd forged not in classrooms, but in the crucible of life, through caring for Amanda, navigating her own aging, and advocating for those society often overlooked. As darkness fell, Betty's thoughts drifted to her late husband, Howard. He'd always been her biggest cheerleader, beaming with pride when she joined Pinerest's board, even though it was unpaid. What would he think of her stepping into a director role at 68? She smiled, imagining his gentle teasing. Betty, you're just getting started, he'd say. She felt a quiet certainty that he'd be proud, understanding that purpose didn't fade with age. The next morning, Betty called David, her eldest son, to share the news. Mom, that's huge, he exclaimed, his voice crackling with excitement. The Westridge Foundation is a powerhouse. This puts Pinerest on the map. Betty laughed, warmed by his enthusiasm. It's certainly a game changer for the timeline. But what do you think about the director job? Am I out of my mind to consider it at my age? David didn't hesitate. Not at all. You're sharper and more driven than most people I know half your age. The question is, do you want this? His confidence steadied her. I think I do, she admitted. After what happened with Amanda, helping others avoid that kind of struggle feels right. David's voice softened. Then go for it. And selfishly, I love picturing my mom as a foundation-backed advocate, hobnobbing at fancy galas. Betty chuckled. I'll need a new wardrobe for that. Her call with Daniel, her younger son, was equally heartening. You've always thrived when you're making a difference, Mom, he said. This sounds like it was made for you. Bolstered by her son's support, Betty began to see herself in the role. She jotted down ideas, programs to launch, partnerships to pursue, ways to amplify the voices of seniors. The more she planned, the more the role felt like a natural extension of her life's work, born from the pain of Amanda's struggles and her own resolve to make a difference. By Sunday evening, Betty's decision was clear. She called Catherine and accepted the offer, with one condition. She wanted to stay on Pinerest's board and continue leading the expansion committee until the project was complete. Absolutely, Catherine agreed. The center and the expansion are intertwined. Your involvement in both will only strengthen their impact. They scheduled a meeting for the following week to draft a contract and outline a strategic plan for the center. As Betty hung up, a wave of exhilaration washed over her. At 68, she wasn't winding down. She was just beginning. On a crisp Wednesday morning, the air buzzed with anticipation as the press conference loomed. Eleanor, Jerome, and I huddled in a quiet corner of Pinerest's community room, our voices low but fervent as we pored over our notes. The weight of the moment pressed against my chest, not just the grant announcement, but the chance to share a vision I'd poured my heart into. Eleanor's steady presence grounded me, his calm demeanor a reminder of the years we'd spent shaping Pinerest's mission. Jerome, ever the pragmatist, scribbled last-minute tweaks to our talking points, his brow furrowed with focus. A communications consultant, recommended by Catherine, joined us, her sharp eyes scanning our faces. "Betty," she said, her tone warm but firm, "facts and figures are important, but it's your story that will stick. Let them see why this matters to you. That's what will pull them in." Her words lingered, stirring a mix of nerves and resolve. I nodded, clutching my notes a little tighter, determined to let my passion shine through. The turnout was staggering. Reporters from local TV stations, the city newspaper, and a handful of online outlets flooded the usually tranquil community room, their cameras and notepads transforming the space into a hive of activity. The hum of conversation felt electric, a stark contrast to Pinerest's typical serenity. Catherine West's arrival added a layer of gravitas. She carried herself with quiet authority, her presence a silent endorsement of our work. My pulse quickened as Eleanor took the podium, his voice steady as he traced Pinerest's history, weaving a story of community and purpose before passing the microphone to Catherine. She spoke with eloquence, her words painting a vivid picture of the Foundation's commitment to reimagining senior living. "At Pinerest," she said, her voice resonating, "we see a model that could redefine how we honor aging, with dignity, autonomy, and innovation. And Betty Smith's leadership has been the heartbeat of this vision." Her praise landed heavily, a mix of pride and pressure swelling in my chest. When my turn came, I stepped to the podium, my hands trembling slightly. The sea of faces, reporters, cameras, curious onlookers, felt daunting, their eyes fixed on me. For a moment, doubt crept in. Could I convey the depth of this project? But as I began to speak, my nerves melted into conviction. "This expansion isn't just about new buildings," I said, my voice growing stronger. "It's about crafting spaces where people can thrive, connect, and keep contributing, no matter their age. It's about affirming that growing older doesn't mean losing your voice or your purpose." The words flowed, fueled by years of watching loved ones navigate a world that too often sidelined them. The reporters' questions were sharp but thoughtful, probing the project's innovative design, its timeline, and its ripple effects on the community. One journalist's question caught me off guard. "What's your personal stake in this?" I paused, memories of friends and family flashing through my mind, their struggles to hold on to independence against the tide of condescension. "I'm in my 60s, I said, my voice softening. "I've seen how society can dismiss older adults, assuming they're less capable or their preferences don't matter. This project is my stand against that. It's about building a future where support doesn't strip away dignity or choice." As the conference wound down, reporters lingered, eager for more quotes. I was mid-conversation with a journalist from the city paper when a familiar figure caught my eye at the crowd's edge. Amanda. My heart skipped. She gave a tentative wave, her expression a mix of curiosity and unease. Excusing myself, I wove through the crowd to reach her. "Amanda, I didn't expect you here," I said, my voice warm but tinged with surprise. She shifted, her usual confidence dimmed. "I saw the announcement in the paper this morning," she admitted. I wanted to see what this was all about." Her presence felt like a fragile bridge, one I didn't want to break. "I'm glad you came," I said, meaning it. "Would you like a tour of the facility? It might give you a sense of what we're building." She hesitated, then nodded. "If you're not too busy," she said, a faint edge in her tone, though it softened with something new. Maybe respect, maybe curiosity. "I always have time for you," I replied, guiding her toward the residential wing. As we walked, I pointed out the current facility's features, cozy common areas, accessible layouts, and shared how the expansion would elevate it with brighter spaces, flexible designs, and tech that balanced safety with independence. Amanda listened, her questions thoughtful, her interest genuine. "This is different," she said as we finished, standing in the garden courtyard. "Not what I imagined for a place like this." I smiled. "That's the goal. We're building a community, not an institution. A place people choose, not where they're sent." We sat on a bench under a blooming dogwood, the silence between us heavy but not unkind. Then Amanda spoke, her voice quieter. "I saw the job posting too, the Advocacy Center director. Are you thinking about it?" I met her gaze. "I've already accepted it." Her eyes widened, surprise flickering into something like concern. "That's a big step," she said, then winced. "I mean, sorry, that sounded wrong. Just most people your age are slowing down." I nodded, unfazed. "It is big, but it's work I believe in, especially after everything we've been through. If I can help families navigate aging with more respect, that's worth my time." Amanda looked away, her fingers tracing the bench's edge. "I've been thinking about that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "about how we handled or mishandled things with you." My breath caught. This was the closest she'd come to acknowledging the pain of our past conflicts. "Richard and I talked on our trip," she continued. "He said if his mom, who's older than you, was treated the way we treated you, he'd be livid. It hit me that I've held you to a different standard than I do his mom, Vivian." I tilted my head, curious. "Why do you think that is?" She sighed, her gaze distant. "Part of it's money, I guess. Vivian's always had wealth, status. People respect her for it. But with you, you've always been mom, the one who gave up so much for us. I never had to see you as you, someone with your own dreams, your own strength." Her honesty stunned me, a raw glimpse into her shifting perspective. "That's insightful," I said softly. She gave a wry smile. "I'm trying. Seeing you here, hearing how people talk about you, it's making me rethink things." My heart swelled. "It means a lot that you came today," I said. "That you're trying to understand this part of me." She glanced at her watch, breaking the moment. "I've got a meeting soon," she said, standing. Then, almost as an afterthought, "That lunch we talked about before the trip, still up for it? Maybe next week?" I smiled. "I'd love that. Text me some dates." As she left, I returned to the community room, where Eleanor and Jerome were wrapping up with the last reporters. Eleanor caught my eye, her expression questioning. "That was Amanda," I said quietly. "She came to see what this is all about." Eleanor nodded, understanding the weight of it. "How'd it go?" I exhaled, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Better than I hoped. Slow, but progress." The next morning, the city newspaper's front page blazed with our story, quoting Catherine, Eleanor, and me prominently. A sidebar announced the Advocacy Center and my role as its founding director. My phone buzzed nonstop. Friends, former colleagues, even my book club, led by the effervescent people who were supportive, yet slightly puzzled by my sudden public role, now thrilled about this new venture in my life. "Betty, you're unstoppable," they said, her voice brimming with pride. Their words wrapped her around me like a warm blanket, a reminder that this new chapter, daunting as it was mine to shape. The call from Richard, Amanda's husband, caught me off guard, its unexpectedness like a sudden breeze rustling through a quiet afternoon. His voice carried a formal edge, not cold but measured, as if he'd rehearsed the words to ensure they landed just right. "Betty, I wanted to personally congratulate you on securing the Westridge grant and stepping into your new role," he said, his tone softening slightly. "It's an extraordinary accomplishment." The praise felt genuine, though it hung in the air, unfamiliar from a man I'd rarely spoken to so directly. "Thank you, Richard," I replied, my voice steady but warmed by surprise. "That's very kind of you." A brief silence followed, the kind that hums with unspoken thoughts. Then he spoke again, his words slower, more deliberate. "I also owe you an apology, Betty. I played a part in what happened, and I regret not pushing for open, honest communication with you. I went along with Amanda's approach, and it was disrespectful. I'm truly sorry." The apology, though stiff, carried a weight of sincerity that stirred something in me, a quiet acknowledgement that he'd wrestled with his role in the rift. My chest tightened, not with anger, but with the faint hope that this gesture might mean something more. I appreciate that, Richard, I said, my words soft but firm. It means a great deal to hear you say that. He paused again, then added, Amanda mentioned you two might be having lunch next week. I think that's a good step. For what it's worth, I believe she genuinely regrets how things unfolded. His voice held a trace of protectiveness, not for himself but for his wife, and I could sense his desire to bridge the gap that had grown between us all. After we hung up, I sat still, the phone resting in my lap, letting the moments settle over me like dust after a storm. Richard's call wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a step, a small, intentional move toward mending what had been broken. It didn't erase the hurt, but it hinted at a future where respect might replace resentment. That felt like enough for now, a cautious foundation for something new. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity, my mind pulled in a dozen directions as I juggled my ongoing work with the Pinerest Expansion Committee and the early stages of planning for the Advocacy Center. Meetings with Catherine, my collaborator and confidant, became a steady rhythm in my week. Over coffee and stacks of notes, we dove into the details, staffing needs, program ideas, and the physical space the center would occupy in the new wing. We're aiming to break ground in September, Catherine said during one session, her eyes bright with ambition. That gives us roughly 4 months to nail down the center's design and sketch out the initial programming plan. The timeline was daunting, but the excitement of it pulsed through me, a reminder of how far this project had come. The center wouldn't open until construction was complete, but Catherine urged me to start outreach and community needs assessments right away. We need to know what people want, what they're struggling with, she said, and I nodded, already mapping out my next steps. I threw myself into research, scouring reports on similar initiatives across the country, hunting for best practices and fresh ideas we could adapt. I reached out to elder law attorneys, geriatric care managers, and patient advocates. Each conversation a thread in the tapestry of needs I was beginning to weave together. Their insights painted a vivid picture of the challenges our community faced: navigating healthcare systems, securing affordable care, preserving dignity in the face of aging. Every call, every note scribbled in my notebook, fueled my determination to make the Advocacy Center a place where those struggles could be met with compassion and clarity. Amid this professional frenzy, the day of my lunch with Amanda arrived, a quiet milestone I'd been both dreading and anticipating. We chose a cozy cafe downtown, its neutral ground a safe space for a conversation neither of us was entirely sure how to navigate. The greeting was awkward, a hesitant dance of half smiles and unsure gestures, too uncertain for a hug, too familiar for just a handshake. But once we settled at our table, menus in hand, the tension began to ease, like a knot slowly unraveling. You've been all over the news lately, Amanda remarked, her tone light but curious as she glanced up from her menu. The Westridge grant is a big deal. It's going to change everything for the project, isn't it? I nodded, a spark of pride flickering in my chest. It really is. With the grant, we can include every design element we dreamed of. No more cutting corners to fit the budget. Amanda set her menu down, her expression shifting to something more thoughtful, almost searching. You know, she said, her voice quieter now, when I first saw you on TV talking about Pinerest, I thought maybe it was some kind of jab at us, a way to make us look bad after everything that happened. Her honesty caught me off guard, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, a crack in the polished exterior she usually wore. It was never about that, I said gently, meeting her gaze. Pinerest has been important to me for years, long before our falling out. It's about the work, the people it can help. She nodded, taking a sip of water, her fingers lingering on the glass. I see that now, she said. It's just strange, I guess. I've spent so long focused on my own career, my own goals, that I never really thought about you having ambitions like this beyond the library. There was no judgment in her words, just a quiet admission of her own blind spots, and it struck me how much courage it must have taken to say that aloud. I didn't always think of it that way either, I admitted, my voice softening as memory surfaced. After your father passed, my priority was keeping things stable for you and the boys. The library was a job, reliable, with benefits. It wasn't a passion, but Pinerest, the community work, that was my way of giving back. It wasn't about climbing some ladder. Amanda tilted her head, her eyes curious. And now, she asked. I smiled, a warmth spreading through me as I thought of the Advocacy Center. Well, now I have a chance to make a real difference in something I care about deeply. The center will help people navigate the same kinds of challenges that drove a wedge between us. It feels meaningful. Amanda fell silent, her spoon stirring her iced tea absently, the clink of metal against glass the only sound between us. I've been thinking a lot about that, she said finally, her voice low. About why I reacted the way I did when you fell and broke your hip. I was scared, yes, but it wasn't just that. It was about control, about wanting to fix the problem of you getting older, to make it neat and tidy. I didn't see you as you, I saw a situation to manage. Her self-awareness hit me like a quiet wave, and I felt a mix of surprise and respect for the work she'd clearly been doing on herself. That's incredibly insightful, Amanda, I said, meaning every word. She gave a small shrug, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Weekly therapy helps. Richard and I started going after everything. It was actually his mother's idea, if you can believe it. My eyebrows shot up, unable to hide my shock. Vivian Palmer, with her steely demeanor and disdain for anything she deemed weak, suggesting therapy? I know, Amanda said, her smile widening. It floored me too, but she said something that stuck with us. If you're willing to ruin your relationship with your mother over control, what might you do to your marriage? That was a wake-up call. Our food arrived then, a welcome pause that let us both catch our breath. As we ate, Amanda asked about the Advocacy Center, her curiosity genuine. I shared the vision, a place offering resources, education, and support to help seniors maintain their independence while accessing care. It sounds like something that matters, she said when I finished, her voice warm. And honestly, it feels like you. You have always been so good at making complicated things clear. I still remember how you helped me with those school projects, breaking everything down into steps I could handle. The memory brought a smile to my face, a soft glow of nostalgia. You were so ambitious with those projects, I said. That solar system model that took over our dining room table for weeks? Your dad was so proud of it. Amanda's expression softened at the mention of her father. He kept that model in his office at the paper mill until it literally fell apart, she said, her voice tinged with fondness. We lingered in those memories for the rest of the meal, sharing stories of Howard and the kids' early years, safe, warm territory that reminded us of the love that had always been there, even when buried under conflict. As we prepared to leave, Amanda hesitated, her hands fidgeting with her purse. Mom, she said, her voice tentative, I know things aren't fully okay between us. Not yet, but I'd like to keep working on it if you're willing. I am, I said, my heart swelling with cautious hope. Relationships change, Amanda. People grow, circumstances shift. What matters is that we're both trying to find a way forward that respects who we are now. She nodded, relief softening her features. Maybe you could come to dinner next month, she offered. Nothing fancy, just family. The kids would love to see you. The invitation felt like another small bridge, fragile but real. I'd like that very much, I said. Outside the cafe, Amanda surprised me with a quick, heartfelt hug. I'm proud of you, Mom, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I should have said it sooner. Driving home, I replayed our conversation, marveling at its honesty, its quiet progress. Amanda was really trying to see me not just as her mother, but as a person with my own dreams and purpose. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start, and that felt like a gift. The next day, I met with the architectural firm to finalize the Advocacy Center's design within the new wing. The meeting buzzed with possibility, the architects nodding thoughtfully as I shared my vision for a space that felt inviting, not institutional. Think comfortable seating areas, not sterile offices, I said. Plenty of natural light, flexible spaces that can adapt to different needs. We want people to walk in and feel empowered, like their voices matter, like they're partners in the process, not just clients. The lead architect smiled, his pen tapping his notepad. That fits perfectly with the expansion's overall concept, spaces that support without controlling. It's the same balance you're aiming for in the advocacy work. As I left the meeting, a deep satisfaction settled over me. The Advocacy Center was taking shape, not just as a physical space, but as a living embodiment of a belief I held dear, that aging didn't mean surrendering autonomy, that support could preserve dignity, that every stage of life deserved respect and possibility. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to walk it, one step at a time. As I drove home through the golden glow of late afternoon, a quiet smile tugged at my lips, born of the unpredictable twists my life had taken. Just months ago, I was a retired librarian, my days filled with the gentle rhythm of books and solitude, yet overshadowed by my daughter Amanda's perception of me as an aging mother teetering on the edge of needing a retirement home. That version of me felt like a distant memory now. At 68, I was poised to lead a foundation-backed initiative, chair an ambitious building project, and step into the public eye, passionate advocate for dignified aging. The sting of betrayal, Amanda and her husband Richard's secret plan to place me in Pinerest without my consent, had transformed into an unexpected spark, igniting a journey of personal and professional growth I could never have foreseen. Their attempt to shrink my world had, instead, propelled me toward a purpose far greater than I'd ever dreamed possible. As I turned into my driveway, my phone chimed with a text from my son David. Just saw another article about the Advocacy Center. My friends are impressed that my mom's becoming a local celebrity. So am I. Love you. Warmth bloomed in my chest as I typed back, hardly a celebrity, just a woman who found her voice a little later than most. Love you too. Stepping into my house, the same home Amanda and Richard had schemed to sell behind my back, I was enveloped by a profound sense of gratitude. It wasn't just about holding on to my independence. It was about discovering a new chapter brimming with possibility, one that society often dismissed as a mere epilogue. The challenges ahead, the Pinerest expansion, the Advocacy Center, and the delicate dance of rebuilding my relationship with Amanda loomed large, but I felt ready. The woman who had nearly been forced into Pinerest against her will was now redefining what such places could be, not warehouses for the forgotten elderly, but vibrant communities fostering dignity, growth, and purpose. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me, but it paled beside the opportunity to turn a personal wound into systemic change that could touch countless lives. As I settled onto my back porch watching the evening light soften into dusk, I realized that the truest response to Amanda and Richard's actions wasn't bitterness or revenge. It was this, purposeful action, a commitment to building something better. 6 months later, I stood at a podium in Pinerest's newly completed East Wing, a red ribbon stretched across the entrance behind me. Autumn sunlight poured through towering windows, bathing the crowd, board members, donors, community leaders, and future residents, in a warm, hopeful glow. My heart swelled as I began my speech. Today, we're not just opening a building. We're launching a new vision for aging with dignity and purpose. As my words carried across the room, my eyes found familiar faces in the front row. My friends Eleanor and Jerome radiated pride, their smiles a silent cheer. Catherine Westridge, a steadfast supporter from the foundation, nodded in approval. David and his brother Daniel sat with their families, their presence a quiet anchor. And there, beside Vivian Palmer of all people, was Amanda. Her face held a complex mix of pride and awe, as if she were still grappling with the woman her mother had become. Our relationship had evolved slowly but meaningfully over these months. Weekly lunches had become a cherished ritual, a space where we peeled back layers of hurt through honest, sometimes halting conversations. Trust was rebuilding, brick by brick. Amanda had even started volunteering at Pinerest, leading art therapy sessions that lit up the residents' faces. Watching her discover her own connection to this community filled me with a quiet joy, a sense that something broken was mending. As the ribbon-cutting ceremony ended with a burst of applause, Amanda approached me, elegant in a new blue dress that caught the light. "Congratulations, Mom," she said, her embrace warm and genuine. "It's even more beautiful than the plans promised." I squeezed her hand, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you for being here. Having family by my side means everything. She smiled, a playful glint in her eye. I wouldn't miss it. Besides, I had to see the Advocacy Center. My mother's the director, you know. Together we walked toward the center's entrance, where its mission statement gleamed in elegant script, empowering seniors to age with dignity, autonomy, and purpose. Those words encapsulated everything I'd fought for, not just for myself, but for everyone entering their later years. The reception buzzed with laughter and conversation as guests explored the facility. Jerome approached, champagne flutes sparkling in his hands. To new beginnings, he toasted, handing us each a glass. And unexpected blessings, I added, my eyes meeting Amanda's. She nodded, her expression softening with understanding. What had started as a betrayal had become the catalyst for profound growth, both for me and for our bond. The daughter who once tried to confine me now stood as my partner in advocating for elder autonomy. Later, as the celebration quieted, I slipped into my office at the Advocacy Center for a moment of solitude. Photos lined the shelves, family snapshots mingled with images from groundbreaking ceremonies, press conferences, and planning meetings, a visual chronicle of a transformative journey. A soft knock broke my reverie. Amanda stood in the doorway, holding a small gift bag. I wanted to give you this privately, she said, crossing to my desk. Inside was a framed photograph I didn't recognize. My late husband Howard and me at a library fundraiser decades ago. My face was alive with passion as I spoke about some long-forgotten project. I found it while clearing out old boxes, Amanda explained. You look then exactly how you look now when you talk about this place, completely alive with purpose. I never saw the connection before, but it was always there. Tears welled in my eyes as I studied the image. Your father always supported my community work, even when it meant more for him to handle at home, I said softly. He'd be so proud of you, Amanda replied, her voice tender. As am I. Her words felt like a balm, soothing aches I hadn't realized still lingered. I have something for you too, I said, pulling an envelope from my drawer. Inside were 2 tickets to the governor's annual charity ball, where I'd be receiving a community leadership award next month. I'd be honored if you'd come as my guest. Richard, too, of course. Amanda's eyes widened. Mom, these are impossible to get. How did you? I smiled. Being on the Westridge Foundation board has its perks. Catherine insisted I accept the nomination, though I never sought the spotlight. Amanda tucked the tickets into her purse. Of course I'll come. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. As we walked to the parking lot, the setting sun cast long shadows across Pinerest's lush grounds. Residents strolled along walking paths or chatted on benches, their faces bright with life. Amanda paused, her voice thoughtful. When I tried to place you here, I thought I was protecting you. I couldn't see that you were perfectly capable of deciding for yourself. I tilted my head, encouraging her to continue. Now I realize that love without respect isn't love at all. It's control dressed up as care. She hesitated, then added, Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. I squeezed her hand gently. You're my daughter. That never changed, even when everything else did. We hugged again beside my car. Same time next week for lunch? She asked. I'll be there, I promised. Driving home that evening, I marveled at life's strange alchemy. Amanda and Richard's attempt to end my independence had instead sparked a new beginning. The betrayal that could have shattered me had revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed, opening doors I never imagined stepping through. My house welcomed me with its familiar embrace, the same house they'd tried to sell without my knowledge. I settled on my back porch with a cup of tea, watching fireflies flicker in the garden. Tomorrow would bring fresh challenges, programs to develop, residents to welcome, workshops to plan. But tonight I savored this moment of quiet triumph. The path from betrayal to this point hadn't been easy. There had been pain, anger, legal battles, and public struggles. Yet here, at the journey's end, was something unexpected. Peace, not just with Amanda, but within myself. A deep certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be, doing what I was meant to do. The woman who had nearly been forced into Pinerest was now reshaping it and others like it across the state. The mother dismissed as frail was now leading a movement for elder autonomy. The betrayal meant to diminish me had revealed my true calling. As darkness fell and stars emerged, I raised my teacup in a silent toast. To second chance, to unlikely allies, to the strength found in standing firm, and above all, to the truth that what seems like an ending is often just the start of something far more beautiful than we could ever have imagined.